Recording in progress.
Okay, I'm going to call this regular meeting of council to order. First, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional territory of the Sanawas First Nation. First item on the agenda is adoption of the agenda. I'll simply make the motion that the September 7th, 2022 regular council meeting agenda be adopted with additional information for item 5A, which refers to Bylaw 298, and corrected information for 9A, which refers to Bylaw 282. As presented. So Councillor Gusselbrecht is seconding. Any discussion on the agenda? Okay, Councillor Gusselbrecht, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to, two amendments. Item 10B of the agenda, I would like to remove that item. My request for the Economic Summit, I'll be paying that out of my own pocket, so that could be removed. And I'd like to move item 9K to follow item 9H. 9K is the special meeting for September the 28th. Have that follow item 9H.
Okay, is there a seconder to the amendments, or you're seconding that, Councillor Savage? Okay, and then for discussion through to Councillor Gusselbrecht, you already explained one of them. Is there anything further? Okay, hearing none, go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, I have an item I would like to add to the agenda.
Okay, so Councillor Savage, before you get into adding anything further, we're just dealing with the amendment that's before us,
Okay.
which is basically deleting, already lost it, 10B, and then moving item 9K to follow 9H. Okay, so unless there's any further discussion, sorry, I'm just noticing Councillor Proctor isn't on the screen.
She's on my screen in the live stream, and I'm just working on trying to get her up there.
Okay, sure, as long as she can hear, I just can't see how she's voting or participating, that's all.
Hi, Councillor Proctor, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. And I can see you.
Okay, so Deputy Director Richardson will work on that, and then I'll just simply, through to Councillor Proctor, I'll just ask when it's at the appropriate times for votes and so forth.
Thank you.
Director Coates has something more brilliant to share.
No, I was just going to share with Councillor Savage that late items would come up under item 13.
Okay, so yeah, so right now, so Councillor Proctor, is there anything that you would like to add to the amendment that's on the floor?
No, thank you.
So hearing none, I will move to call in question. All those in favor, and then Councillor Proctor.
In favor.
Says carried unanimously. All right, so we're back to the agenda as amended. Through to Councillor Savage.
Yes, I have an item I would like to add to the agenda. It's not only emergent, but it's urgent. And I will read the motion, which is to immediately stop the sale of historical items for our old former church, which belongs to the community. This must be a community decision. And so I move that the following motion be placed.
Councillor Savage, I'm going to interrupt you there. So you've made your intent knowing that you're going to be presenting a late item. And so when we get to that part of the agenda, we will...
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. It's not what I'm doing. I'm proposing this is right after item 8 because it is so urgent. And we cannot risk it running out of time before we get to late items. Any delay in this historical pews and their valuable wood will be gone. So there's a precedent for this, as you recall. Just to give you one example, Councillor Gusselbrecht made an urgent, he called it an emergency motion to disallow videos, the audience videoing council meetings, and that was allowed. through a vote by council right at the start before we did anything of that meeting. So I'm asking for the same process for this, to vote on it so it can be right after item 8 to absolutely ensure we get it done tonight. If we don't, the pews will all be gone, so.
Okay, so I understand the nature of your request. I will go through to our parliamentarian just in terms of just, basically the agenda is council's agenda. We all know that. So if we're free to amend it as we choose, but through to Director Coates.
Yeah, so you have a motion on the floor. It was carried unanimously that it be adopted as amended. If you want to amend it further,
Sorry, it was the adoption, or it wasn't adopted as
it
amended.
was just the amendment?
Just the amendments, that's correct.
Okay, because I thought it was as amended with additional info for.
So now we're back to that with the restructuring of the agenda,
Okay.
so the one
So we're
deletion
doing this as a separate motion, the two
is
amendments?
a separate amendment, yes.
Okay, and so the motion to amend was adopted unanimously, and now you're considering a second amendment, and that would simply be a motion to move item 13 to follow item 8. And just to confirm the example that was given, that was with a previous procedure bylaw where additions were actually considered at the beginning of the meeting. Since then, council has been doing them at the end.
Okay, thank you for that. So through to Councillor Savage, I would agree with staff's recommendation that we would just simply move item 13, which is the introduction of late items, to follow what you've recommended, which is basically item 8 on the agenda.
That's fine. I agree with doing it that way, and I'll make that motion. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a second? Second by Councillor Gusselbrock. Okay. Any discussion on that? Moving late items to follow item 8 of our agenda. Okay. Hearing or seeing none, I will move to then calling the question. All those in favor and opposed? That appears to be carried unanimously. Okay, so now we're back to the main motion or the agenda as amended. So is there any further amendments to the agenda this
Point of privilege. Can you see me on the screen now?
Yes, we can see you on the screen.
Great, thanks.
All right, so through to council, any further amendments to the agenda? Okay, hearing or seeing none, I will move to call in question. All those in favor, opposed? Okay, the agenda is carried unanimously. All right, so that takes us on to item 5 of our agenda. So we have a public hearing this evening. So this is in relation to the District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180/2020 amendment, miscellaneous bylaw number 298/2021. So notice of public hearing was posted on August 24th, 2022. At this point, I will move to my script. Okay, so Councillor Gusselbrock.
Am I missing something? Was there no in-camera agenda?
So through to
The-
staff, well, I can answer the question. So our in-camera agenda follows our the in-camera session follows the close of this open meeting.
Thank you.
So you should have received your in-camera materials. All right, so at this point, I will move into my script. So good evening, and on behalf of council, I would like to welcome everyone watching the live stream, participating in the public hearing remotely via Zoom and in the council chamber. This public hearing is being conducted by electronic means pursuant to the Local Government Act, Community Charter, and the Council Procedure Bylaw for the purpose of council to receive and consider input from all persons who believe that their interest in property is affected by proposed District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180/2020 amendment, open bracket, miscellaneous, close bracket, bylaw number 298/2021. We have adapted our public hearing procedures tonight to facilitate remote and in-person participation. The council chamber at Municipal Hall is located at 7192 Lantzville Road and is open with limited seating for members of the public who do not have the ability to connect to the public hearing electronically, so that you can attend in person to watch and hear and ensure that you have an opportunity to be heard. If you wish to speak and have not registered, we ask that you register now. For those who are watching online via our live stream, please note that you can still join the Zoom webinar to speak to proposed bylaw under each agenda item, under agenda item 5 on tonight's agenda by going to lantzville.ca, clicking on September 7th in the calendar, click View Details, and follow the instructions to register in the Zoom webinar link provided. The purpose of this hearing is to provide an opportunity for council to receive and consider input from persons who believe that their interest in property is affected by proposed bylaw 298. It is not an opportunity to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with either council members, staff, or members of the audience who may be opposed to your particular view, nor is it an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions about bylaw 298. Those in the gallery, please refrain from talking, turn off your cell phones, and clapping is not permitted, so everyone has the opportunity to be heard and no one is discouraged from speaking. As chair, I ask that you restrict your comments to the proposed bylaw and be as brief and concise as possible. Council members may, if they wish, ask questions of you following your presentation. However, the main function of council during this hearing is to listen to the views of the public and is not the function of council to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with individual citizens. Okay, I'm just getting a weird echo feedback kind of thing here. Okay, so those in the council chamber who wish to speak can register by signing the speakers list located on the table at the entrance of the council chamber. Those who have pre-registered via Zoom will be given the first opportunity to speak, and then those registered in the council chamber. All speakers lists will be managed by staff in person from the council chamber. Speakers participating via Zoom must remain muted until your name is called and muted again once you have concluded your remarks. Please do not hang up or leave the webinar if you wish to speak again. Once the first opportunity speakers lists have been exhausted, I will call for a second, third, and fourth time speakers who have new information to present and wish to speak again. Remote participants, please use the Zoom raise hand feature to indicate that you would like to speak again. This function can be found in your webinar controls. If you're participating by telephone, the raise hand function can be activated by pressing *9 on your keypad. I am asking speakers to respect a 3-minute time limit for each turn in order that everyone who wishes to speak is able to do so. Speakers may speak once for more than once if they are providing new or additional information. Following the closure of the hearing, council must not receive further submissions or correspondence from the public concerning the proposed bylaw. Should you wish clarification on any specific issues regarding the project after this evening, please direct your inquiries to district staff. Immediately following the close of tonight's public hearing, the regular council meeting will continue with the agenda order. I will now proceed to the public hearing for agenda item 5A. This public hearing is being convened in order to consider proposed District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180-2020 amendment, open bracket miscellaneous, close bracket, bylaw number 298-2021. During this public hearing, any person in attendance who believes that their interest in property is affected by proposed bylaw number 298 shall be given an opportunity to be heard on the matters contained in the proposed bylaw. However, it is important that all who speak at this hearing restrict their remarks to matters contained in the bylaw. Those of you who have registered to speak concerning the proposed bylaw should, at the appropriate time, after your name has been called to speak, begin your comments by clearly stating your name and civic address. After this hearing has concluded, council may, without further notice, give whatever effect council believes proper to the representations made at this hearing. I will now call on the Director of Planning and Community Services, Mr. Frank Limschue, to introduce the proposed bylaw. So through to you, Director Limschue.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to provide a bit of context. So the current zoning bylaw number 180, was adopted on March 30th, 2020. Generally, it's good practice to review the bylaw and keep track of any anomalies, inconsistencies, and minor changes as you work through the document. The proposed amendment bylaw before council was introduced back in November 17th of 2021. And the purpose of the bylaw is to consider a number of miscellaneous amendments to the zoning bylaw, which including to the mobile home park zone, the village commercial zone, the agricultural zone, the home business regulations, definitions, and the rezoning of four properties. These amendments are articulated in the proposed amendment bylaw and has been identified in the staff report that's come before council previously. So with that, I'll stop there and pass it over to your worship.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I will call for the first time persons registered remotely and in the council chamber who believe that their interest in property is affected by proposed bylaw number 298. Please wait for your name to be called, and when it is your turn, please state your full name and civic address. Staff will proceed through the remote registrant list first, which I don't think there are any, and then through the gallery registrant list. When it is your turn, staff will call your name, and then you may give us your input regarding the proposed bylaw. You'll have up to 3 minutes to speak. I will let speakers know when you have 30 seconds left and when your time is up. Okay, so through to staff.
We have no remote participants registered, and the first speaker is Toby Seward, followed by Jamie Dryberg, and then Rochelle Mundell.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Toby Seward, 1820 Argyle Avenue in Nanaimo. I'm assisting Tom McGregor, the owner of their property at 7134 Blackjack Drive, which is on your agenda item 3C. I'll be very brief, but Tom's family has owned this property since 1953, and since 1975 it's been used as a mobile home park. In 1986, Tom's father passed the property on to Tom, and he's owned it ever since. The use as a mobile home park, as I mentioned, there has been units in place since 1975. Interesting, the BC assessment site lists as a mobile home park built in 1970. In very simple terms, we're looking at this as a two-step process. The first step is this housekeeping amendment to confirm 9 units.
I'm just gonna stop the speaker just for a second. It looks like probably a point of privilege here, so is it a volume?
Could you just ask Mr. Seward if he could speak a little bit closer to the microphone so those of us with, somewhat hearing impaired can catch it all?
Yeah, you just have to get in real close.
Of course. Would you like me to start again? Again, representing Tom McGregor, the owner of the property, used as a mobile home park since 1975. Interesting, the BC assessment website shows it as a mobile home park built in 1970. What Tom has asked for is a two-stage process. This housekeeping amendment that's before you this evening, which would allow 9 units on site and confirm the status as a mobile home park, which it has been for 47 years. The next step would be a rezoning application, which Tom has made, which would come before council to allow it to be considered for 16 units, so an increase from 9 to 16 units. But the first step is to have status as a mobile home park. So that's all he wanted me to raise. We're certainly interested in council's input on this, and again, a longstanding property owner here who wants to legitimize something that is been in use for that long period of time. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you. So through to staff for the next speaker, please. We may have a question for you, Mr. Seward. So Councillor Savage just
Yes, thank you, Mr. Seward. We're getting to know you quite well with your applications here, so thanks for coming out tonight. Now with this, you made reference to a rezoning application that has been proffered to the district, and Mr. McGregor has offered elements of this rezoning in a neighborhood letter referring to it. So you've said it's for 16 units, and these are modular homes on lots, are they? On fee simple lots or strata lots, or to purchase? Or?
So
certainly I can answer that.
You can, I believe, again, just limit it to the public hearing topic, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there are, these are not strata properties or fee simple. It's a one property mobile home park. And they are a combination of travel trailers, mobile homes, and there's one house on site.
Yeah, no, I mean, the rezoning application you just referred to, which
Yes.
is for 16 units,
So Councillor
will
Savage.
be rental paths, will it?
Councillor Savage, I'm just going to interrupt. My understanding is that you can ask questions about the information presented for clarification. It's not to start getting into further information requests from the speaker. So unless you need to clarify or
Yes, thank you.
you know,
The
what the speaker
16,
has
the
given us.
16 units was brought up, so I'm just trying to find the nature of them, that's all. So I understand there'll be a mobile home park set up then. Yeah, okay. So it's basically then tonight, to summarize, you're asking for the mobile home park zone, and then the next step will be to increase it from the 9 units to 16 units. And where in the process, may I ask, please, where amenities or parkland would be offered
Okay,
to
Councillor
the community?
Savage, please don't respond to that. Again, it's just to the representations that it's made. He has made no reference to amenities and about a subsequent application coming before council. So,
May I ask then if there are any amenities being offered in this current application?
we know there's no amenities being offered in this, Councillor Savage. So I'm going to conclude the questions at that point.
Yeah. Can I ask him to speak to that, why there's not?
No. Okay, thank you. All right, so the next speaker, please. So you're going to have to make the little red light come on by pressing the button, and then you're going to have to speak very closely to the microphone.
Good evening. My name is Jamie Dryborough. I live at 7075 Killett Road here in Lantzville, and I've been here for 40 plus years. I wanted to make an informed remark tonight, and I went downstairs and spoke to staff to get more detail about the proposed bylaw amendment. And I'm speaking specifically about Section 2, which refers to Schedule A of the zoning bylaw number 180, 2020, and subsection A. There's a table included there, which I hadn't seen before, and staff very kindly gave me a copy of that. But the table is unattributed and doesn't explain anything. It just lists 4 properties and the number of houses, mobile homes, and recreational vehicles allegedly on each of those properties. Am I permitted to ask a question or any questions about that table?
No. You can make comments about the table, but in terms of asking
Okay, I will.
questions to staff, that's not.
All right, then I will make comments on the table. I recently was looking around at mobile homes for sale in Lantzville, as recently actually as 2 days ago. And in the course of that inquiry, I visited all 4 of those subject properties, looking for mobiles for sale, and also endeavored to determine the veracity of the information claimed for each of those 4 properties in that table pertaining to the number of houses, mobile homes, and recreational vehicles. I can't ask the question about how that table was prepared and when it dates from, but I just want to draw it to council's attention and to staff, because ultimately they are involved in this. At least one of those subject properties is incorrect, appears to be incorrect. In the totals listed, there are, in one case where it's indicated there's only 1 house, and by house, I think we're probably referring to residential structure. On one of the properties, there's 4, and they all appear to be occupied at present, and I was told that they've been all 4 occupied for at least 15 years, which is why I'm curious about the date of this. So that one is quite clearly incorrect. Another one, if you sum the total of the three categories, you'll come to 30. And on that property, there are a minimum of 32 numbered spaces. I didn't go any further to see if the numbers go beyond that, but that information is not correct. Only one of these four, for me as a non-expert visitor, but a pretty sharp eye, I would say, only one of the four actually confirmed the information listed in the table. The fourth one,
Sorry, you have less than 30 seconds.
the fourth one is so hodgepodge that I don't know how it could be validated. There's mobile homes, RVs, new, old, other structures, all kinds of stuff on that property that just begs to be validated and verified. Thank you.
It's your time. Okay, through to staff. Next speaker, please. So again, name and address for the record. Oh, and you're going to have to get that little red light
Hit
on.
the
So
button.
again, name and address for the
My
record,
apologies.
please.
Rochelle Mendel, 6711 Alder Road. I am opposed to the rezoning of the Blackjack property to a mobile home park. We who live in this neighborhood have many questions and concerns which we feel haven't been addressed yet. We are plagued with a transient population in this area and many homeless people and a lot of crime that comes along with that. We are concerned about what the future will bring as this development grows, and from what I'm hearing tonight, the plan is to grow it, or this, not development, this property. Will this mean future more applications beyond this? When we got the letter from the owner to our neighborhood, it said 13, and now I'm hearing 16. So now I guess I'm concerned these numbers keep getting bigger and bigger. We need more public engagement. We had a barbecue in our neighborhood a couple weekends ago and no one knew about this. So we need better engagement. Also, I assume that this application would have brought signage into our area like most public hearings do, but there is no sign in this neighborhood indicating that there was a public hearing for tonight. The owner at one point spoke of modular homes, putting in modular homes for seniors for 55 plus. Isn't it zoned already for that? Why do we need to change it to a mobile home park if we want to just put in modular homes? So please, would you consider refusing this application at this point and further engaging the public and the neighborhood? Thank you.
Okay, and next speaker through to staff.
Sorry, that's all the speakers we had registered for the first round. I'll just go check on the
Thank you.
second round and Nelda will check.
Nobody is registered. Okay, so at this point, I will call for the second time for persons registered remotely, which we have none, and in the council chamber who have new information to present and wish to speak again. So since we have nobody online, I'm going to skip past that part of the script and then through to staff. Nobody's registered second time. Okay. And at this point, I will call for a third time for persons registered remotely, which again, I don't believe we have any, and for those in person who have new information to present and wish to speak again. And just for the benefit of, oh, okay, thank you. Through to staff, would you like the third time speaker to sign? Okay. And then while that's happening, I will just read for the benefit of people who may be watching. For those of you who are watching via our live stream, please note that you can still join the Zoom webinar to speak to proposed bylaw number 298 by going to lantzville.ca, clicking on September 7th in the calendar, click View Details, and follow the instructions to register in their Zoom webinar link provided. And for those who are in person, if you wish to again sign the third time speakers list, this is the time to do so. So yeah, so you may go to the podium. And again, name and address for the record, and make sure that little red
Jamie
light.
Dryborough, 7075 Kellett Road. And I didn't get in within my 3 minutes the opportunity to say I'm asking council to defer passage of this bylaw and to direct that staff validate the information that's alleged in that table in section 2 before proceeding.
And again, through to staff, there's no other third-time registered speaker or in-person speakers. Okay. So at this time, before I close this hearing, I ask if there is anyone else who is not registered remotely or in the council chamber who wishes to speak regarding bylaw number 298, or if you wish to speak, we ask that you register now. I have to allow for a pause. That's why I'm pausing. And at this point, I'm calling now for a second time. And again, that's for those who are watching remotely and then in person. Okay, and I am now calling a third and final time for comments before this hearing is closed. Okay, hearing or seeing that no one wishes to speak, just a note to those who are watching and to the gallery, after the close of this public hearing, council must not receive submissions from the public. Seeing no one who wishes to speak, I declare the public hearing for District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180/2020 amendment, open bracket miscellaneous, close bracket, bylaw number 298/2021 closed. That concludes the public hearing. And for council, we are now on to the start of the consent agenda. So I'll just simply make the motion that staff has handed out a replacement sheet so that the recommendations listed for items 7A through to 7C and the consent agenda be approved. Is there a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Savage. And we're going to call the question. All those in favor and opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay. And at this point, we're moving into the public input period. So at this point, persons recognized by the chair to speak must first state their name and address for the record and may speak once for up to 2 minutes unless council resolves otherwise, and are limited to providing comment regarding the items listed on the agenda on the council agenda for this evening, excluding public hearing topics. Comments must be directed to the chair and are not to be directed to individual members of council, staff, or the audience, and must not include personnel issues. So at this time, I will call upon those. I don't think we have anybody remotely registered for public input. No, okay. And for those that are present this evening in the gallery, if you wish to speak to any of the non-public hearing items, this is your time. All right, seeing that nobody is wishing to speak, we'll move on in the agenda. So now we are going to the introduction of late items. So Councillor Savage, you have a late item that you wish to introduce.
Thank you. This is regarding the pews that are being sold out of the church currently. And the motion is that council direct staff to forthwith instruct the Seaside Community Society to immediately cease and desist disposing of or selling any item that has been or is contained within the District of Lantzville Community Use Building B, the former church at 7244 Lantzville Road. And Director Coates has my motion in writing. Thank you.
Okay, so through to council, at this time, what we're simply voting on is whether or not to accept this as a late item. We're not actually getting into debating the late item itself. So through to council, I believe this is debatable. So. Oh, sorry, I didn't get a seconder. It's a bit rusty. So Councillor Gilsbrecht is seconding that. Great. And then we can move into discussion. So is there anything further, Councillor Savage, before we go to the seconder?
Would you like me to speak to the motion now, or?
No, we're not
Okay,
debating the
thank you.
motion. It's just whether or not to accept this motion as a late item.
Yes, I'll just briefly say that if we don't do this now, then our opportunity to have a say in what happens to these pews will be gone. So it's important we come up with something to delay or postpone, defer, or whatever the process that's happening now in a way that council desires. But the important thing is to take action on it. That's the key. Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Gilsbrecht?
I'm in agreement.
Okay. So unless there's anything further, I will move to call in question. And again, we're just voting on whether or not to accept this as a late item. Okay, hearing and seeing none, I will move to call in question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. Okay, so now we are on to the motion and through to Director Coates.
Seaside has reported that they've stopped the sale. The question, before you formulate a motion, I thought we should clarify that there are things that belong to Seaside in there, the chairs being one. The issue of the pews, the lease agreement doesn't speak to it exactly, so I believe they had thought that that was okay, but they have stopped the sale.
Okay, well, we just passed the motion to deal with a late item. Are you still wishing to deal with that delayed item, Councillor Savage?
Yes, please, just to ensure that it stays that way. And I'll first of all just make an amendment, if I may, please, to the motion.
Well, just read the motion.
Okay,
as
the amendment is after the motion to insert.
Sorry, for clarity, you haven't made a motion yet?
Well,
So there
that's-
is no
he's just gonna
amendment.
make
So
the
just make the
motion.
motion the way you want it.
Okay, I'll make the motion now, thank you. That council direct staff to forthwith instruct the Seaside Community Society to immediately cease and desist disposing of or selling any item that has been or is contained within the district of Lantzville. Community Use Building B, the former church at 7244 Lantzville Road, except items owned by the Seaside Community Society.
Okay, and do we have a seconder to that motion? Second by Councillor Gilsbrecht. Discussion on the motion. Go ahead, Councillor Savage, if you wish.
Yes, I say this with the greatest respect to the Seaside Society. I know members there that have worked so hard over many years. And it's just with this, it's their hearts may be in the right place. It's council's job to have the process in the right place. And so the proper process here, I think, is to invite input from the community as to A, what is the best use of these old pews full of local history and valuable aged, high quality, clear wood, and B, what ultimate use of this building would residents like to see. The public may ultimately agree or not the pews are best removed. So really all we're doing tonight is to give them an opportunity with process and together as a council determine just which direction we're heading with the church and the ultimate use of the pews. And if they're not being used, just one use I'd love to see is the price of lumber and its current low quality possibly makes this aged wood pews very valuable to us, more so than the money. So many uses of this wood, from adorning the interior of new community halls, perhaps in the foothills, an eventual new district hall, etc., or in new bus shelters, even for some outdoor use. But you can repurpose this aged wood as trim or even converting it to doors. And what a beautiful touch in your new buildings, having this history of the old church there. So there's a little more to it, I think, than just selling them off. So that's all. It's just about process. And with this, it'll just give us time. I know this was on our priorities to talk about the church, its ultimate use, and so on. So that's all it is. But once again, it's not meant to criticize at all the Seaside Society. They were simply doing what they thought was best, but it really rises to being a community a project, and we should really hear from the community. So the community does own the old church, now called Community B, and should have a say in its future. So that's it. That's all it is. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Gusselbreck, if you wish.
No, thanks.
And through to the rest of the council. Okay, I got a few comments, but Director Coates, if you wish. Yeah.
Yes, I'd be remiss if I didn't share that the society had believed they had sought staff support, but the discussion pieces had focused on other aspects of their email rather than on that. They stated they are attempting to create an increased usable community facility, recognizing structural limitations whilst recognizing historical furniture by retaining several pews. So there never was an intention to sell all of the pews. They had offered them first to St. Philip's, and they had offered them to the fire department. But as I stated at the beginning, they have stopped the sale. And just for clarity, the motion that's on the floor would not affect any kind of public engagement on the future of that building. Certainly, council has considered that in prior strategic plans and has not pursued doing a public process to engage the community on that. And that might be something council in their next strategic planning would want to determine if that's a priority and what that would look like. So at this point, the motion that's on the floor just directs the society to cease and desist disposing of or selling items, which they've already announced in relation to those pews that I've already stopped it. And yeah, so that's.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so just in terms of transparency, I contacted staff this morning based on seeing some of this stuff posted on social media and so forth, and you know, I had my own concerns, and a lot of it had to do around the whole idea of when we have surplus items in the district, what's the proper process to follow and so on, because at the end of the day, you know, we're not talking just about a few $100s in sales, it's more like a few $1,000s in sales. And then it also morphed into discussions about, you know, the future use of community building B and so on, and bringing it up to code, and which is going to cost a lot of money, more than any monies that could be generated by the sale of some pews and so forth. So I just, to me, I just felt like, you know, I can support this motion simply because council should be, I think, involved in this to some degree, along with staff, and planning out what the future use of that building is, because there's going to have to be probably some community consultation around that, and how we're going to move forward, because it's going to require some substantial funds. So it's not about you know, raising some money to maybe replace some equipment within that the first floor of the church, like maybe if there was a bathroom upstairs, replacing a toilet and a sink. This is about creating a bathroom, which is going to cost lots of money. The plumbing and everything, just it's a lot of money. So these are future decisions of council, in my opinion, and how we're going to repurpose that space. So I support the motion, even though it seems redundant at this time, but I think there needs to be better lines of communication between council staff and anybody who's looking after our basically community assets. So unless there's anything further, I'm going to move to calling the question. Okay, hearing or seeing none, call the question. All those in favor and opposed, and I believe that's carried unanimously. Okay. So at this point, we're moving on to under item 9A of the agenda, so bylaw number 282. Is someone prepared to make this motion? So Councillor Gusselbrecht, go ahead.
That the District of Lantzville, I'm sorry. Yes, that's it. That the, we're on 9A, correct? Yeah. That the District of Lantzville Phase Development Agreement, brackets Clark Med, bylaw number 282, 2022 be given first reading. Are we taking them separately? Chair?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there a seconder? And second by Councillor Wilson. And again, first reading is just simply to introduce the bylaw. It's not debatable. Through to staff, questions permitted? No, okay. So we're just simply introducing the bylaw first reading. Okay, I'll move to calling the question. All those in favor and opposed? Okay, noting that Councillor Savage is opposed, carries. So that takes us on to the next one. So is someone prepared to make that motion? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Gusselbrecht.
That the District of Lantzville Phase Development Agreement, brackets Clark Med, bylaw number 282, 2022 be given second reading.
And second by Councillor Wilson. Okay, and discussion on this. So through to the mover.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Question through the chair to staff. Could you remind us when was the zoning bylaw and OCP bylaw first adopted? And secondly, what is the purpose of a phase development agreement?
Your Worship, through the council, the amendment bylaws for both the OCP amendment, which is amendment bylaw number 224, and for the zoning, it was amendment bylaw 229, were both adopted back in November 2nd of 2020. I should also mention that along with the adoption of the bylaw, one of the conditions was that the developer register a Section 219 covenant at that point in time.
Sorry, it's a point of privilege. I apologize, Director Limschue, but I was just a little hard. I didn't hear any of that. Thank you.
All right. So both, just to recap quickly, both bylaws were adopted
Councillor Gusselbrecht, Mike.
back in November 2nd, 2020. At the time, the purpose of the bylaw was to allow for a residential development, which included single-family, duplexes, townhouses. In addition to the adoption of the bylaw, there was a covenant registered on title outlining amenities to be provided and the timing of the provision of those amenities. The applicants, the developers have made application to replace the covenant with what's called a phased development agreement. And effectively, a phased development agreement is quite similar to a Section 219 covenant. It's an agreement between two parties. So in this case, it would be an agreement between the developer, the landowner, and the District of Lantzville. It'll outline the purpose of the development, the amenities that are being provided, the timing of those amenities as the developers work their way through the project. Perhaps the biggest difference between the two documents, Section 219 versus a phased development agreement, is that the phased development agreement basically locks in the land use for a term. So what that basically means is council or the District of Lantzville cannot, assuming that the phased development agreement is approved, council cannot amend the land use bylaw for the term of that agreement. It also binds the developer to make sure that they provide the amenities, along with the timing for the provision of those amenities as outlined in the document. In this case, the term of the phased development agreement is for a period of 10 years. The other big difference between a phased development agreement and the Section 219 covenant is that a phased development agreement has to be approved through the bylaw process. That means a public hearing will have to be held, assuming first and second reading is granted by council.
Okay, Councillor Gusberg.
Supplementary. A Section 219 covenant is set out in the materials as well as the phase development agreement. My reading of the two documents appear that they're very similar in what they say. What's the rationale behind the two documents?
Sorry, Your Worship, through the council, perhaps you can rephrase that question. I'm not sure I understand what you're...
Why have two documents rather than just, let's say, the phase development agreement? Why have the covenant and the phase development?
Oh, my apologies. So effectively, the phase development agreement is replacing the Section 219 covenant. Sorry if I did not make that clear.
Any other follow-ups? If you wish, go ahead.
Yeah, I've looked through this phase development carefully. As you pointed out, the original subdivision, or pardon me, rezoning in OCP was more than a year and a half ago. There are certain amenities that the developer is giving as part of the deal. My understanding of the phase development is that the developer is to donate a 5-acre parcel of what will be zoned community service land on the Clark Road property. Council has already initiated plans to develop drawings for a new fire hall and potentially a new work yard. As well, there's a $50,000 cash contribution. Most importantly, the developer must build a sanitary sewer and water line that would extend from the eastern end of the property, which is the Ware Road boundary on Clark, all the way to the western end. And that must be done up front. And finally, go ahead. Right.
I'll let you finish and then I'll
Okay.
clarify.
And finally, that the developer must provide a sanitary sewer line that goes from the Clark Road development up to, which is basically the E&N railway line, but would daylight on Elm Road. I believe that's Elm, maybe it's Hayes Place, but it would daylight and allow the Wood Acre development to eventually hook up to the sewer. They now have a common septic field that all the people on David Place, Hayes, Elm use now, but this stub line would allow them to hook up to that line.
Go ahead.
Your Worship, if I may, I just wanted to clarify a couple of the points. With respect to this phase development agreement, the developer will be obligated to provide the 2-hectare site on Clark Drive, pay $50,000, and also provide the lands for the Alts Road Reservoir. And those amenities have to be provided basically right at the onset. So prior to the developer commencing construction work for installing any services, those amenities come to the district. With respect to the services connecting the water and the sewer lines, I'll call it on the Clark Drive portion, the provision of those services will take place at the time of the first subdivision for for that area. So, when the developer decides to move forward with creating lots on the Clark side, they will be required to provide that water and sewer connection through the entire project right at the beginning of subdivision. The development itself may take place in various phases. However, the water and sewer connections that Councilor Garcia mentioned will be provided right at the onset.
Yeah, go ahead.
One last question through to staff. Am I correct in stating that this agreement was a long time coming? It was vetted extremely carefully by both the lawyers for the district as well as the lawyers for the developer, and that product is now before us tonight.
That's correct.
Okay, through to the seconder if you wish, and then I'll open to the rest of the council. Okay, and through the rest of the council. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, I'd just like to make a few comments, please, on what I consider the downsides within this phased development agreement and the positives. And then I've got a couple of amendments, just two I'd like to propose at some point in the discussion. So the downsides that I see with this are these layout plans, the site layout plans, right in the phase development agreement show a density and style which won't work in Lantzville because it hasn't worked elsewhere. The layouts show very small lots, and we all know big houses will be built on them as they are elsewhere. It's the most common approach to these small lots. This causes unpleasant neighborhoods elsewhere with the stress of parking, traffic, and conflicts with pets, noise, and other irritants. A small lot layout like this only works if the homes are small. If you do this, the developer profit is still there, but the neighborhood is less imposing and more appealing with a lighter footprint of people and traffic. And such small homes are more agreeable to seniors and starter owners, which is the thing that's badly needed in Lantzville. So on the positive side, the site plan shows the 30% target of public land was met with the most beautiful Bloods Creek Gully, as well as the 5 acres of community service land. The phasing in this agreement is also good because it brings water and sewer to Alger Road right at the start because they've been waiting quite a long time for the opportunity. Whether or not they take advantage of it in the service area vote, it'd be up to them. And it's also close to the Hayes Road subdivision. And I've heard from a number of people there, they're anxious for water as well as the sewers bonus as well. So there's now an opportunity for those areas, including Blackjack Drive, to finally get water. It's in their hands at this point. And if the PDA, the Phase Development Agreement site plans, showed the number of lots closer to the OCP guidelines of 159 units and the planned homes were smaller, the site plans in the Phase Development Agreement would be acceptable, far more acceptable to the community. But as I say, site plans with the very small lot format, big house combination is just bringing failure to Lantzville, in my view. So while I don't support the site plans, I would urge the developer to explore the smaller homes to build goodwill with the community and really service a need that we have, as well as providing the real market need for the smaller ranchers for starter homes and especially for seniors. So I'll leave it at that and I'll do a couple amendments when the opportunity arises. Thank you.
Okay, additional first-time speakers. Through staff, I just have a real quick question. In terms of the Clark side of the development, I don't have my the actual zoning amendment here this evening, but what is the parcel coverage for the lots on like that are even contained within phase one? So if we were referencing page 170 of the agenda with respect to Clark and looking at the phase one, what would be the approximate parcel coverage in that area for homes? Or what is it? I know it's
Yeah.
stated specifically.
Unfortunately, I didn't bring my zoning bylaw with me because, just for clarity to council, the phase development agreement is focused on the provision of amenities. It's not really a land use bylaw. The zoning's already been adopted by council. It's there. It exists today, and certainly the applicant has the ability to move forward with the subdivision as long as they comply with the zoning.
Yeah, and that's how I understand it as well. We're not here to necessarily change the actual zoning because that's already done. That ship has sailed. One of the things that did come up in the discussions around this this particular project was the provision of the half-acre park on the med side of the development and waiting for the phase development agreement to potentially try and increase the size of that park. Because at the time we were looking at the rezoning application and OCP amendment, by making any changes at that time, it would have triggered another public hearing. But at that point, the conversation, I believe, if correct, it was this is something we could look at this stage of the process in terms of trying to make that park and the med side a little bit bigger, even if it went from half acre to 3/4 of an acre or 1 acre. So is there a possibility within this process to look at trying to do what was once discussed?
Certainly, that is something that's an issue I'll have to discuss with the applicants. They're not in the audience as far as I can see. Certainly that the increase in park size is larger than what's being proposed. And so I'd be hesitant to make any sort of decision. But to answer your question, it is something that I can go back to the applicants and discuss, and certainly have an answer for council prior to public hearing.
And for me, it's not about reducing the density. That's already been established. So ultimately, what I would do is I'll make some of the lots smaller throughout the rest of that side of the development. But again, I think trying to preserve a slightly larger park in the middle of that subdivision would be great for the community or future part of our community. The one thing I am really happy to see in the phasing, and again, through to council for council's benefit, this is all on page 170 in the phasing plan, is that with phase one, we will see the extension of the services that were basically presented during the rezoning and OCP amendment. So I'm pleased to see that, and pleased to see that there's going to be extension of trunk lines going to Wood Acres. That was one of the concerns I had about the phase development agreement right from the onset, and had discussed with staff, and I'm again pleased to see that it's actually in this phase development agreement. Other than that, I'll leave my remarks at that point, and let others, members of council, have a chance to speak if they choose to do so. So for first-time speakers, before we go to the second time. Okay, so the second-time speakers. Oh, sorry, hands moved. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Savage.
I'll go ahead with my amendment, please, that the motion on the floor be amended by adding, as amended by increasing the size of the park on the med property to 1 acre.
That's not one of the motions you gave me. Could you repeat that?
That's number 3 on my list there, please.
Is that,
It's not. It's something that would have to be included in the agreement.
So currently, that's not a clause in the agreement, so it would just need to be worded to say, so it's not just amending the motion, it's that you'd be giving it second reading as amended by adding a clause to increase. Does that work?
Increase, yeah. The park area up to.
Increase the size of the park on the Med property up to 1 acre?
I think it's 1 acre, yeah. You want to read that out?
So that the motion on the floor be amended by adding as amended by adding a clause.
if I may, Director Coates, what
Yeah.
I was wondering if staff had a recommendation of a potentially better way to tackle this request.
I thought I had heard the Director of Planning say that he would go and talk to the applicant about it and then come back to council with a recommendation.
And that's what I heard, and I think that's
Yeah,
probably the
okay,
cleanest way of
I
doing
think
it,
that
but
would be the way to
again,
go.
I don't want to put staff on the spot,
Yeah.
The,
nor do I want to delay this process
well,
either,
so that's actually where I was going to go. Certainly if we, if there's no consideration of second reading and a motion to advance the bylaw to public hearing, it certainly pushes everything back. For me to go back, have a discussion with the,
Yeah, sorry, again, could you speak up a bit? Thanks very much.
thank you. Yeah, so I'm just concerned about the timing, in the sense that if I were to go back and have the discussion with the applicant, the timing for the public hearing would be delayed. So just so that council is aware of that. I think certainly I understand the change that's being proposed by council to look at increasing the park area in that general vicinity, the med properties from half acre to 1 acre, and I have no problems having a discussion with the applicants around that, and certainly we can have a decision one way or another as to whether or not they're supportive of amending the agreement to include a clause that references that within the phase development agreement.
Yeah, so in terms of, sorry, I'm not trying to hijack your amendment, Councillor Savage. I'm just trying to figure out the best way of tackling this. In terms of timelines around the scheduling a public hearing, I know we have a motion or on our agenda this evening to deal with that, but what's the minimum amount of time that was required between notice and the actual meeting or the public hearing?
Well, there's 2 weeks of notice period. There's in advance. One has to be not more than 10 days before and not less than 3 days before the public hearing.
So I know for myself, like I don't have any other amendments and other requests really for this application. This is it. So, I'm prepared to call a special meeting if needed to make sure that second reading is passed in time for the scheduling of that public hearing later in the month. So, acting in good faith there. So just give me a sec, Councillor Gusselbrecht, I noted. So through to Director Limschue.
So might I suggest that council consider giving second reading to the bylaws? I'll certainly go and have the discussion with the applicant. If the change warrants an additional meeting, then we will, as staff, we will work to try and coordinate that. If it doesn't warrant a meeting, if there's another mechanism that we can use to ensure that, this item is addressed adequately for council, we proceed on to public hearing.
And just for clarity, the intent, because there's a motion later in the meeting, doesn't specify which bylaws will be going, but the intent was to publish notice for public hearings for the 28th. And so that would require the notice going to the newspaper.
By the end of this week.
Yeah. This week. Yeah. So it's not just the actual publication date, it's the newspaper's deadline. So for it to go into the newspaper on the 14th, we have to have it to them by noon tomorrow. So you'd be saying goodbye to the 28th for the public hearing, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
So really, I guess in terms of just correct procedure, if we simply did pass second reading and then instructed staff after that to go and talk to the applicant regarding increasing that park site on with respect to med, and if they were amenable to that, would that somehow invalidate the process? So then we have to further delay or reschedule the public hearing. Because again, my intent is not to delay that. I'm satisfied with how things are probably going to unfold. So
Yeah, that's a substantive change. It would need to be in the package that the public is looking at. And so, yeah, and if it's going to be, we have to state the purpose of the bylaw in the notice. And so if one of the purposes is to increase the park from a half acre to 1 acre, I mean, that's probably something you would include, I don't know.
get through to Director Limschue.
Sorry, just for my own clarification, did council pass a motion to increase the park area? Or is it just still under discussion? Yeah.
Yeah, this is just discussing process before we throw a motion on the table, because it's not trying to frustrate council. I'm just trying to figure out what the best way of going about this is in terms of presenting a motion.
Point of privilege.
And what's your point of privilege?
Where is this park, first of all?
It's the the park that's on the med side of the development, kind of in the middle. It's the half-acre park.
Okay, so now I'll call a point of order that let's do this parliamentary. Now that there's a motion, let's see if there's a seconder. And before we get ahead of ourselves talking about rescheduling, see if the motion passes.
Okay, fair enough. So through to Councillor Savage, you still want to make that motion and just clarifying that it is the one that Director Coates has.
Yes, this is simply the motion, and then I'll read it again, that the motion on the floor be amended by adding as amended by increasing the size of the park on the med property to 1 acre. Then if I may suggest thereafter, once we're in agreement on that, if we are.
Okay, so let's get a seconder to that.
Okay.
Is there a seconder to the motion?
And just for clarity, I think we talked about it being as amended by adding a clause to increase the size of the park on the med property. I guess it's from a half acre up to 1 acre.
Yes, that's the motion. Thank you.
Okay, and do we have a seconder to that? Okay, I will second the amendment. Okay, and then through to proper procedure, Councillor Savage, you have, you can speak to it first.
Yes, all we're doing here is just agreeing with the intent, and then I dare say we can leave it in staff's hands to best come up with the process to accomplish this. And if it's a slight delay to the 28th by doing it, then I certainly will agree to fast-tracking it to the soon as possible thereafter. And then the public hearing will be done, and the process is straightforward after that. So it's really, the way I see it, a minimal time that this would be, but what a nice, thing to do for the residents of that area to increase the park to 1 acre. That's a real bonus, and it would be lovely. There's not much walking distance from that end of Alds Road and the foothills. Spence's Way there would all be able to enjoy a park there that was a place you could take kids and so on. And with 1 acre, it's just so much more enjoyable. So that's the key for the small weight. I think it would be worthwhile, and I'll certainly, in good faith, be on board with fast-tracking whatever's needed to minimize any delay, if any, with this. So that's basically it, making it more attractive for the community. Thank you.
Okay, as a seconder, I'll just be real brief. I see it as, envision it as kind of like the Parkwood neighborhood in Nanaimo. Great subdivision. Central to that subdivision is a nice community park. I don't know the exact size of the park, but I can probably say with good confidence it's more than half an acre. And again, it's nice and central for that whole subdivision, and it's fantastic. All the neighborhood kids play there. It's I know my kids have gone there a few times to hang out with their friends and so forth. But again, that's just that was one of the things that was batted around when we were going through the rezoning and OCP amendment, and here we are at the phase development agreement time, and I'm hoping that council will be somewhat amenable to working through this. So, Councillor Gesselbrecht and then Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I'm not amenable. In my opinion, this horse left the barn over a year and a half ago during the extensive discussions we had on the rezoning and the OCP amendments. The developer has already given up a wider walkway along the stream that runs through Clark. He gave that up at the time. We have a walkway along Bloods Creek now. That is another one of the amenities, or actually one of the givens, the green space that the developer agreed to. We don't need more park here. Within less than half a kilometer, you have 1,100 acres of the Foothills Park. Up the street, and even before the foothills, you have Galloway Marsh, which there is actually a park back in there that you can hike through. And not too far away, we can use the city's park, May Bennett. We have lots of park space, and we're going to have the waterfront park, the Woods Pearson Marine Park, which is going to be developed. So no, the developer agreed to a half acre. The also has agreed to donate 2 hectares, and through the chair to staff, has staff done an evaluation of the value of that 2 hectares of community service land? What is the value?
Your worship, to the council, as far as I'm aware, there has been no appraisal completed for that 2 hectare parcel.
Follow up to that, we do know that there are 2 parcels up on Lantzville Road that are for sale, each about 1.5 acres, and they're zoned commercial community service. And one's 1.75 million, the other's somewhere in that range at a square foot price of $44 a square foot. If we apply that same calculation to this community service land, once it's zoned community service, my calculations say we have a value of some $10 to $11 million on that donation alone. So no, I'm not in agreement to expanding the park. If the developer, when he actually starts to put in the services and everything, decides that there's room to do that, fine, but not at this stage.
Okay, so I have Councillor Wilson and then Councillor Proctor.
Bit confused because, with all due respect to Councillor Savage, I heard him talking about just the look and feel and the squeeze, if you will, that I think would be put more on these lots if all of a sudden now you're going to allow the same number of units, but you're going to actually ask them to put in a 1 acre park. So for that reason, number one, I won't be supporting this motion. But also, I think Councilor Gasbrecht, you forgot that Copley Park is just also down the street on Andrea, which is close by. And I don't look at a half acre as small, but the other thing that I think we also got to keep in mind, we do have a lot of parks, and I mean, who's going to pay for managing all these parks? I mean, the bigger the park, the more public works staff that we're going to need, and we're already going to be feeling a bit of pressure when we officially can start working on the Piercewood Marine Park. So I think we just have to be mindful of those points. And for that reason, I won't be supporting the motion.
Okay, and Councillor Proctor.
I don't actually have anything new to add at this point. Thank you.
Okay, and through to rest of council for additional speakers. So Councillor Savage, if you wish.
Yes, the current park is 0.44 acre. And the OCP does state that there's adequate park on the Med property. We discussed this on the OCP committee, that we wanted to ensure all the parkland wasn't just down in the Bloods Creek Gully there in the Clark area, but that Med also had an adequate park. And Council Gasbrecht, you must have forgot what it's like raising kids. You want to leave your house, walk with them to a nice playground. That's your relief for the day. If you've been working hard, you get to take a break with the kids, or if you're on a weekend, you've been with them all day. It's a nice break to allow them to look after themselves for an hour or two on the play bars. And if you look at the layout of the park, it's a very thin park between big houses, so 1 acre would give it a little more beef. So right now it's separated by a road. It's more like two little 0.22 acre parks, if my memory serves me. So that's the key. And if you think of the size of these little postage stamp parks, like Sebastian, I think is around a half acre, or is it less? I forget. But anyway, there's just not a lot of room on a little 0.22 acre for substantial enjoyment of families and so on, and you just don't want to be walking such long distance. And if you live in the Med property, you're not going to walk up to the foothills into the wilderness there. For kids, same with the marsh, you want an area where they can play and have fun. That's the whole point of these playgrounds, and there's already going to be a playground there. It's just on a smaller park, so the maintenance will already be done, and so on. So anyway, that's basically it. And it also, as I say, it has this aspect of adding a little extra something for the community that was very opposed to the other parts of this development. So it would be helpful. That's all. I'm just looking for helpful ways to make it a little bit sweeter for the community. It's a very minor adjustment, I think. Thank you.
Okay, and again, for myself, just not be repetitive here, but just the motion reads up to 1 acre. So who knows what the developer may come back with. They might be like, sure, we'll take it up to 3/4 of an acre. Also to consider that what's laid out in the drawings and so forth, these aren't how it's going to be. It still has to go to the subdivision planning process, and the actual layout and configuration could be a lot different than what's laid out in the drawings in our agenda package. So this is just conceptual, and if maybe it goes to 2/3 of an acre, 3/4 of an acre, I don't know. Maybe they will look at doing something more central in that area. And again, the nature of this park, as I envision it, is a lot different. It is not a nature sanctuary type park. This would be a park that has playground area and space, maybe picnic table. I don't know. I'm not in the business of designing parks, but again, that's why I gave the example of the Parkwood subdivision in Nanaimo, and chances are you may have seen it, may not have, but again, that's all this motion is doing. Is simply taking it back to the developer and to say, can you consider this? And if they say, no, we don't want to do this, we feel that we have been extremely generous in other aspects of the application, then so be it. But why not ask? It's a pretty simple request. So I'll leave it at that. Unless there's any additional speakers, I will be likely moving to calling the question. So through to Councillor Savage, and then
One last comment, please. Now, Councillor Gesselbrack, if we didn't ask for things, we wouldn't be married, right? So don't be afraid to ask. We're doing this on behalf of the community.
Is that a proposal?
Okay, so I'm gonna move to call in question on the amendment. So all those in favor and opposed, knowing that Councillor Gesselbrack, Councillor Wilson, and Councillor Proctor are opposed, the amendment fails. Now we're back to sorry, from the gallery, please refrain from making comments. Okay. So through to council, are there any additional amendments? Okay, Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Yes, this is a very minor amendment, and I'll explain it so you understand when I read it. It's just one sentence explanation. It's just giving the final approval to council instead of the Director of Public Works on just a couple of small aspects of the two parks. That's all it's doing. So I'll read the motion. That the motion on the floor be amended by adding, as amended in Schedule B, and sorry, this is number 4, Director Coates, of the motions I gave you. So it reads that the motion on the floor be amended by adding, as amended in Schedule B, in sections 3B, 3C, and 4B, by striking approved by the district's Director of Public Works and inserting approved by the district's council.
Okay, do we have a seconder to the amendment motion? Okay, I will second the amendment motion. Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. As I say, these are very minor. One of them refers to the lovely Bloods Creek Gully, as the Director of Public Works will approve whatever's presented there. And I've heard from a number of people in the community, especially the Blackjack area, that they have preferences. And now what's being introduced is a black chain link fence for the purpose of defining the environmentally sensitive area. While I'm not entirely sure what that's about, it seems obvious that it is the fact that the environmentally sensitive area is the Bloods Creek Gully. So if it's being defined by a black chain link fence, that means it's being severed off from the walking areas. So as you walk along, the pathway is going to be right beside where the houses are. So you're walking beside a house fence. And then on the other side, you're hemmed in by a black chain link fence. So this is what the community wouldn't find appropriate. So that's why I'm saying, why not just leave it up to council approval? Anything to consider having a natural path that winds through the trees instead of taking out trees for a wide asphalt sidewalk, basically having it a more natural. And then also this idea of a chain link fence. I've been in so many parks all through BC, I've never seen this. Forbidden Plateau, for example, has little signs right on the ground that says restoration area, please keep off. People respect that generally. Walkers and nature lovers are very respectful. It's just unnecessary. And also, there's nothing, the Benson River, or Benson Creek Falls Park, for such a long time had a trail right down right down to the creek, and now they've got a bridge over it, so they see the value of accessing these creeks, but in a very environmentally responsible way, be it stairs or whatever. So that's all it's doing, and then it's giving some say in the playground park. I assume it's going to be a kids' park. We don't know. And that's the one up on the Med property. So that's all it's doing, is giving council a say in the final approval of how it's going to look, what's it going to be like. But the important one, as I say, is this glorious Bloods Creek Gully Park. We have to do that right. We know the community had a lot of problems with the density, so at least let's give them the best possible aspect to the reward, which is the big reward is the Bloods Creek Gully Park, just a gorgeous walk. But the way it's laid out now, you're not even going to be able to see the creek on the walk. You're back from the top of the bank. So that's why I'm saying let the people that know that trail so well, I've walked it many times, but let the people that really walk it like almost daily, let them have a say. They'll know better than anyone how it should be. So that's all. It's a minor amendment, and it just means that it's going to be a little more community-minded, the result of this park. And the one on Med, that's all it is. Thank you.
Okay, I saw staff. Did you have clarification on that?
Well, I guess I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't comment that it is not a minor amendment. And you know, I think often of Elimina's words where he says...
I'm sorry, I can't hear Director Coates.
I often think of Elimina's
Yes, and sorry,
words...
as a point of order, please.
What's your point of order, Councillor
I
Savage?
really think that we keep the debate to 5 members of council, not that staff enters the debate, please. It's to dispute that I'm saying it's a minor amendment it's my opinion. I'm entitled to it. That's really entering the debate. So if there's something about the aspect of how I described it, that's one thing, but it really, thank you.
Sorry, your point of order is noted, Councillor Savage. So again, I believe staff is mindful of not entering into the debate. That's why I've asked in terms of clarification. And through the gallery, please refrain from commenting. So unless there's clarification
The clarification would be that for management, it's important that something not be represented, that it's a minor amendment by changing the role of council to the role of staff. Now, I was referencing Elimina's words where he says, don't assume that it's out of malice, that it's just out of a lack of understanding of process and whose role it is. So when we talk about the Director of Public Works, it would be very unusual for a council to be approving construction. That is the role of the staff. And if council is unhappy with the staff, then, you know, there's options for council in that regard.
Okay. And so as a seconder, I did have some kind of comments / questions around that because where it gets confusing, I think, again, in terms of roles is, you know, we'll have the subdivision approving officer that's going to be essentially after this creating the actual subdivision. And at that point, council is out of the equation and we cannot interfere with the subdivision approving officer's work. So I guess really my question would be how is Public Works going to garner the input from residents in terms of how this is going to develop? So using the Bloods Creek corridor as an example, how is that going to be, how's the community going to be brought into the fold? And it's not just going to be left to a couple individuals to decide how that's going to look. And then, you know, at the end of the day.
Yeah. So generally speaking, yes, you're correct, Your Worship, in that at the end of the day, the approving officer has final say with respect to the approval of the subdivision. In considering whether or not a subdivision plan is approved or not, the approving officer takes into account everything. Servicing, the provision of amenities, the timing of it, is it complying with the zoning, is it complying with the agreements that are registered? You know, certainly staff is listening to this discussion and debate that's occurring around the table. And certainly obviously we're aware, because we are listening, that there's concerns with respect to the pathway, the treatment of the fence, and so forth. Between myself as the approving officer and the Director of Public Works, certainly we will talk to one another. We will figure out a way of addressing the concerns and issues that have been raised tonight around the council table moving forward. I mean, typically, when it comes to the installation of infrastructure, the approving officer doesn't simply, approve it without checking with the other departments to make sure that everything is done in accordance with our bylaws and so forth, and good practices.
Someone answers my question. I think the concern is, and I'll use Sebastian Road as an example, and I know that was not a rezoning, that was basically just redoing a road. But we did bring the community into the fold on how we were going to design that road and make sure that residents were happy with the end outcome of that. And obviously we can't please everybody, but we can definitely make an attempt. So what I'm hearing from Councillor Savage is there's concern over, how will Bloods Creek be eventually, what will be the end result, or what product, if you want to call it that, and will that reflect the community values? That's so I don't know how staff is going to address that, or if they even can address it.
Well, I think, certainly we as staff have the ability to go and arrange a meeting with the property owners that'll be backing onto that property, or the folks that are in that neighborhood, and have a discussion about, okay, what is the appropriate treatment around the fencing in that area. And certainly we will have discussions between ourselves, the neighbors, and the developer, and ultimately try to come up with a plan that satisfies as many folks as we can.
And just keeping in mind that, for Public Works, their intent was to, meet with residents, but to also ensure at the end of the day, the safety of hikers. So there has to be a good balance, but that definitely is a staff role.
Okay, so recognizing Councillor Gusbrook, I think you had your hand up. So go ahead.
Thank you. No, I won't be supporting this amendment. This is an old debate at this council table of trying to micromanage operational matters by supplanting the Director of Public Works with council. And not this council as much as the past council, that debate arose a lot. The CAO, who is our only employee, hires competent staff to carry out the wishes of council. If staff is not competent and council sees that, there's remedies. But trying to have council do this is entering into the realm of operations. Council is here to provide governance at the council table. Staff is there to do operations. As one of my colleagues up in Campbell Rivers often says, council lays down the track, but it's staff that drives the train. And that's exactly, I think, what Director Limschue was saying. There's a lot of factors that go into that. And yes, I remember Sebastian Road, and yes, the public got involved, and yes, staff listened to that and tried to accommodate as far as the engineering principles and Mother Nature allowed. I'm thoroughly confident that the Director of Public Works can stick handle this. And it's interesting that we had the same debate just today at the RDN at Parks and Trails about paths meandering through neighborhoods, which this will be. And the complaint from most of the electoral directors was that the RDN's got to build fences because people don't want, hikers and bikers wandering off into their property, or people who don't have homes taking up residence in those properties. And a fencing's a good idea. It's the same reason that I put up a very nice cedar fence at the back of my property at Copley Park for privacy. If I see somebody out there I want to talk to, I'll go out my gate and talk to them. But I want to keep other people off my property. And I think that's going to be the concern, especially in this area. We've got Bloods Creek. There's going to be a corridor there. We have a corridor on that stream that goes through the middle of the property. We have the ENN Railway, which is used by a lot of people. There's going to be a privacy concern. And I think that trying to supplant the Director of Public Works with council and is not going to work. Director of Public Works can always get input from the public. The public seems to be very ready to write letters and contact staff. Let's leave it at that. That's a good way of doing it. Thank you.
Okay, additional speakers on this? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, it's simply a fact. The precedent has been set that council has every right and has done so on many occasions, inserted themselves in the development and the creativity of parks. The foothills council would be playing a major role in how that's developed and uses and so on. Council has the authority to appoint committees to recommend what's in parks. The waterfront park is a good example. Council is playing a lead role in what happens there. And you agreed with me, Council Gasselbrack, when the memorial trees and benches, we gave an order as council to have that program stopped. That's completely inserting ourselves into the park. And I dare say council also has the right to remove the removal of the chain link fence. So why on earth would we spend this money or the developer's money on these things just to have it reversed? So I'm trying to be helpful here. The difference between staff doing it and council is council can take their direction from the community. Residents can have a say with council. They have no such say with staff if staff chooses not to. So the whole thing here is that we want this to be the best park possible, and my motion gives us that. We're not going to put in things the community doesn't want, but we might get stuck with something we don't like and have to spend money reversing it. So what kind of good process is that? So that's my point. Thank you.
Okay, any additional speakers on this? Okay, hearing and seeing none, I will move to call in question. All those in favor and opposed, Councillor Gasselbrack, Councillor Wilson, and Councillor Proctor opposed. The amendment motion fails. So any further amendments from council? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to calling the question on second reading. Sorry, I'm just gonna get back to my motions. All right, so at this point, again, just through the council, everybody knows what they're voting on, second reading, okay? So all those in favor and opposed, Councillor Savage is opposed, second reading carries. Now we're on to the next one, so go ahead, Councillor Gasselbrack.
Yes, thank you. That the District of Lantzville Phase Development Agreement, Clark Med Bylaw number 282, 2022, be scheduled for an electronic public hearing to be held on September 28th, 2022 at 6 p.m.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Okay, second by Councillor Proctor. Discussion on the scheduling of the public hearing. Okay, hearing or seeing none, I'll move to call in question. All those in favor and opposed? Councillor Savage is opposed. The motion carries. Okay, so now we're on to item 9B of our agenda. So this is,
Point of privilege, please.
yes, what's your point of privilege?
I would like a 3-minute break.
So Councillor Proctor is called for a 3-minute recess. So noting the time is 7:46, we'll reconvene at, we'll just say 7:50.
Thank you.
Time is 7:50. I'm calling this meeting back to order. Just as a point of privilege for council, if members of the gallery can just refrain from talking while the meeting is going on, that'd be much appreciated. Moving on in the agenda, so we're on to bylaw number, make sure I got this correct. Yeah, so bylaw number 298. So this is 9B of the agenda. Is someone prepared to make that motion? Okay, Councillor Gusselbrecht, if you can read the motion, please.
That the District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180, 2020, amendment miscellaneous bylaw number 298, 2021 be given third reading.
And do we have a seconder to this? Okay, second by Councillor Proctor. Discussion on the bylaw. So Councillor Gusselbrecht, go ahead.
Yeah. This zoning bylaw was passed back in 2020, and I recall the debate at the time. There were some concerns that, there were some new items in the zoning bylaw. We had a lot of discussion about it. It was finally passed, but at the time, it was mentioned that it's a living document. It's not the Ten Commandments. It's a document that can be amended, and that's what we're dealing with tonight. And this has been going on, this amendment has been before us several times. So I don't think anybody is caught by surprise that it's coming back tonight. To me, some of it's housekeeping. I know there were some comments at the beginning of the meeting about whether things are as they appear. We have a staff report. I'm going to accept the staff report at face value, and especially with respect to the mobile home parks. I say let's pass it. Thank you.
And through to Councillor Proctor, seconder, if you wish. Okay. And through the rest of the council. So Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Yeah, that certainly changes things for me now that I've heard Mr. Seward indicate that the ultimate rezoning is 16 units, but that really underlines the problem here. And I think a number of neighbors would be happy to see it more a normal living area than it has been for many years. It's been more like a gypsy place in some ways. There's, I've heard many neighbors tell me what's been going on in there. And the way to do it is to have this rezoning application that apparently he submitted, do it that way. Move ahead with your rezoning with the actual ultimate rezoning application. So we know the density, we know how much parkland we might be getting, what's the green space buffer that's legally defined, not just roughly indicated in a neighborhood letter, and the type of homes and so on. And most important, these people are on wells, all of them on Blackjack, and they border, a lot of them border this property. They do not want stuff going on there that can affect the wells. And of note, it's not community water or sewer. And just in terms, I could go on for an hour about how it's not, I don't consider it a mobile home park. Traditionally, a neighbor told me it started off with 2 houses and they've lived there for 40 years. So it's something that's just sort of grown over time, willy-nilly. And another aspect to why it's not a mobile home park is that the old zoning, previous zoning, for no community, no water required 1 acre minimum per mobile unit. So if there's 9 or 13 or however many now, it didn't even meet that criteria back then. Also of note, we should be showing the 2014 council respect that registered a covenant of bylaw contravention against this property, showing that it wasn't an authorized mobile home park at all. And in this report, it stated only 1 building permit was ever granted for what's on there. So it's in no way, shape, or form a mobile home park in my mind. And plus the other problem, it sets the precedent now of unequal treatment between properties. No other property is going to be allowed to use the excuse of grandfathered use. Stan Potty is a perfect example. He had his marijuana store there for a number of years. So he wasn't told, well, since it's an existing marijuana store, we'll give you the zoning for it. So those are just a few of the problems. So basically, what I want to protect the residents there, and I don't want to creep where it's done in all these stages. And the speaker's point earlier when he said the units actually existing in these places don't match what the chart says, that shows creep. Things can be added or, whatever. And that's my worry, is the creep there. So I'd much rather see it formalized in a proper application. So if it's 16, it's 16 and not anymore. My worry here is it's just all intentions without a formal rezoning application. There's nothing to say that it's going to be 16 units. He could change his mind as soon as he gets the MHP zone and change it to, 30 units, 40 units. He could sell it. He tried selling it not too long ago, a couple of years ago, was it? It was on the market, so he may decide that again to sell it. We just don't know. Intentions don't count for anything in rezoning. Rezoning goes with the property, not the person or their personality or their intentions. So for me, this process is completely improper, and I'll just read out the 4 points why I think it's improper. This is being called a housekeeping issue, but rezoning an 8-acre parcel from R1, minimum 2 lots per acre, to a mobile home park zone is not housekeeping, it's a major rezoning. The proper procedure is to have the applicant submit his rezoning proposal so everyone can know exactly what is ultimately being proposed, and to have a rezoning sign posted on the property so people know. And the staff report states there's a rezoning application in, and this has been confirmed by Mr. Seward tonight that that's the case as well. So it should not be withheld from the public or council. I've requested it a week ago to see it, and it hasn't been shown. I think we have to know, if we're rezoning this MHP, what's going to be the ultimate goal here. We should know this. So, and the other thing is how are we missing out on amenities? When does the amenities kick in? If you're rezoning,
Councillor
you
Savage,
expect something in return. I'll finish off the
Yeah,
next
you'll have to
turn.
finish
Thank you.
off your over your speaking time. So additional speakers on this. Okay, Councillor Gesselbrecht, go ahead.
Yeah, we're not talking about a zoning tonight, rezoning. I'm not even sure why Mr. Seward brought that up. I know there's been letters going back and forth, and Councillor Savage seems to have held that banner here tonight. We're not talking about that. We're talking about normalizing a situation. We heard that the property was purchased in 1950. This isn't some Johnny-come-lately, that it's been under the BC assessment since 1970 as a mobile home park. And I totally disagree with the example of Mr. Potty. Mr. Potty's only been here a couple of years, set up a pot shop. This gentleman has had a mobile home park here for, some 50 years. It's no secret. So if you have a problem with what's happening on the property, and we certainly have a couple of properties in Lantzville where there are problems, there's theft, there's drug dealing. That's handled either by bylaw, we have a bylaw enforcement officer, or handled by the RCMP. And there's many other areas in the regional district, they're having the same problem. But that's a bylaw issue or a criminal issue, not what we're doing here tonight. And specifically for the mobile home park, staff's looked at this. They've gone back in the records. We had this discussion at least 6 months ago where staff confirmed what they've put in here. So we're not talking about rezoning. If that does come up in the future, I'm sure the next council will, have at her. But that's not our job here tonight.
Okay, additional speakers, I got a few comments and then, yeah, so this is the one part of this miscellaneous amendment bylaw I struggle with. There's a number of concerns. Even hearing tonight that, some of the numbers in the report may be wrong. I don't know. Maybe staff can comment on the accuracy of the information provided in the report. So yeah, that's my first one is we'll start there, just the accuracy that's in this report.
The, as I indicated, the bylaws were actually introduced to council, or this miscellaneous bylaw was introduced to council back in November of 2021. At that point in time, I was not with the District of Lantzville. I inherited the report. So rightly or wrongly, I made the assumption that the information that's in the report is correct and that staff of the day did the appropriate research to confirm that the numbers are correct. I think the other point I should make is that, yeah, there is the potential for projects to expand over time. But the way the bylaw is written in its current state, it establishes a baseline density for each of those properties. So, if you look at the Parkland Mobile Home Park, 1 house, 29 mobile home units, 6 recreational vehicles, and so forth for each of those properties. Now, if there's a discrepancy or if there's an issue with respect to the property owners exceeding those limits, then certainly, staff can investigate that through our bylaw enforcement arm. And, and we do that on a daily basis for buildings that have been constructed without building permits, for this, that, any other thing. And so there is a mechanism for us to address it. I can't sit here and say 100% definitively that on each of those properties, there's exactly, 29 mobile home units on Parkland, 7 mobile home units on Shore Grove, because I haven't actually been out there to walk through each of those properties. A concern's been raised tonight, and certainly we will investigate it and confirm. And if there is exceedance of the bylaw numbers, then we will address it through the proper channels, which is through our bylaw enforcement arm.
Okay, thank you. The other thing that's, so there's that as one thing. The other part, in terms of the residents in that neighborhood even being aware of what's going on, there has not been a sign put up indicating the change in land use. And it is a change of land use. A lot of people in that area would just make that assumption that it is residentially zoned, not a mobile home park zoning. So, again, I think in terms of the public being fully aware of what's going on, it doesn't sound like that's the case. I think this is kind of jumping. I understand what the intent of this is to do, and that's just to get a baseline of what's going on in there and so forth. But I think this should go through the proper process. So I guess really my next question is, why can't we do like a temporary use permit and give the property owner a timeline to get everything in order and get an application in? So to say, yes, we recognize you have 9 dwelling units on that property, or whatever configuration of mobile homes and so forth, and say you got 2 years to come back to council and go through a proper rezoning where the public is actually brought into the fold in a proper manner. So is that a possibility for this property owner to essentially apply for a temporary use permit?
Technically, the option to apply for a temporary use permit is there. And certainly the property owner could make application for that and go through that process.
Because, what I'm hearing tonight is we have someone who's assisting the property owner saying, okay, well, it's going from 9 to 16. That's the plan. And then we hear from other speakers saying, well, we were told 13, not 16. Again, it's just the waters are muddy on this. And again, I understand what the intent of the this is to do, but I think it's, we are changing land use and or at least a designation, and I think it should go through the proper process. That's just my 2 cents on it. So I'll just leave it at that. I'm prepared to make an amendment, but I'll like to hear from other speakers or members of council first. So Councillor Wilson, go ahead.
Just a point of clarification through mayor to staff. If I'm correct here, we're not in this vote for this particular item, bylaw number 298, we're not looking to increase the units from 9 to 16 on this particular one. We're just looking to zone the property because it got missed. That's just one part of the bylaw, that to just normalize it as a mobile home park. We're not moving it from 9, pushing the envelope from 9 to 16 with this particular.
That's correct. The purpose of this bylaw is to zone the property so that it matches the use on the property, which is mobile home. Further to that, when you look at the table that's outlined in section 2 of the proposed zoning bylaw, it identifies White Pine Estates Mobile Home Park at 7134 Blackjack Drive, and it identifies what they're permitted. So it's 1 house, 4 mobile homes, and 4 recreational vehicles.
Which is what exists right now.
Which is, that exists on the site. As far as the numbers, I believe it might be over that, to be honest with you. So what this does, it sets a baseline, right? So 2 things. The zoning will basically change from R1 to mobile home to recognize the use. And then it sets the maximum number of units that you can have on the site today. So if you add the numbers up, 1 + 4 + 4 is 9. The second application, which hasn't come before council yet, is to increase those 9 to 16.
Okay, additional speakers? Okay, Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll finish off with what I was saying. The reason this rezoning application's been brought up, because the owner himself brought it up. He's been sent out a letter to the neighborhood telling them about the good aspects of this to sway their support. So they've every right to see the real rezoning. So he was the one that introduced it. And so we don't know what the ultimate density, he's indicating 16 now, there's nothing stopping him from changing that later. How much parkland, what's the real buffer going to be set out legally, and so on for residents. And in terms of that, there's nothing wrong with 16. It's an 8-acre piece. That's only 1 per half acre. But number 3, council has been given no opportunity to suggest what amenities or parkland the district will receive for rezoning this property from R1, 2 units per acre, to a mobile home park zone. Don't we all wish, can I come in tomorrow and do this with my property and just say, well, can we just rezone it now and to mobile home park, then I'll get around to you in a few weeks with my actual application. No, it's being very selective. So the principle that this is a housekeeping rezoning because it matches the past use of the property is a principle not being applied equally to all properties. Other residents aren't allowed to have illegal businesses and uses on their property, then claim they're entitled to rezoning to allow these uses because they have historically had such uses. And in terms of it being a mobile home park since 1950, the neighbor who's lived there for 40 years mentioned it started with 2 houses. So we know in the past 40 years there were 2 houses there. That's not a mobile home park. So that's basically my point. There's just too much to talk about here. I'll be repeating myself. I said all this about 6 months ago. So just come forward with the rezoning application. Do it properly. I'm here. Whatever the neighborhood wants, I'll support. So I'm not getting involved in if it's great or not, that's up to them to tell me. But what I am trying to do is protect them, and all I'm seeing here is completely free rezoning. Since when does the district give away free rezoning? I've never seen the like in my life. So now moving on from that, please, to another item here through to staff is the park there. It's 3-point-something acres, and it's Zone T for transportation now, so it's owned by the highways, the province. So is there a reason why we're proposing to zone it park now? And will it make any difference since the use the province decides will supersede any park zone we have? It's the Peace Director, Limschue, right beside the potty property, right in the Bloods Creek Gully there. And it's in your list
Is there a
of...
reference of the page in the agenda?
It's a list in your items there where you listed the 4 or 5 items by address. I'll try to find it, but it's in the staff report with the 4 items you did. Page 16 of the agenda, please. Number 2.
Yeah, you're correct, Your Worship, through the council. You're correct in saying that, yeah, the designation could stay transportation. It is owned by the province, and, you know, certainly if they have other desires in terms of a use for that land, they could supersede our zoning. When I saw this on the map, you know, I thought it was being redesignated or rezoned park because of the fact that doesn't a portion of Bloods Creek run through that property? And so by the time you factor in the setbacks for riparian purposes, there really isn't a whole lot of use for the site. And so it just seemed to make sense that the park zone is more appropriate than transportation.
Oh, I see. So it might have a factor then of setting riparian zones more so than if it was a T zone?
Well, technically, it's, you know, it's owned by the province, so it doesn't, you know, no one's going to go in there except for the province. And certainly there are rules and regulations with respect to setbacks from riparian. And so if there was going to be work done, the different departments would have to talk to, or different departments would have to talk to one another to ensure that they're not overstepping, you know, one department's regulations. But I think, you know, not being able to have a discussion with the previous planner, based on what I've seen, it seemed like the proposed rezoning just reflects the current site conditions on the site and the practicality of what the long-term use would be on that property, which is basically leave it in a natural state. So why not designate it as park?
Yeah, can you tell me one thing? Historically, does highways, they seem to have a very forgiving, welcoming approach to people using their land, as long as they're respecting it, right, with trails and so on. So that is the case that would be with this one as well, yes? That the park wouldn't really change the use, but transportation generally wouldn't have a problem with people accessing it and so on.
I can't speak for the Ministry of Transportation. You're asking me to offer an opinion. You know, what may be practiced in the past may not necessarily be consistent with practices today. So I I think I should refrain from making a comment on that. All I can say is that, generally speaking, there is good cooperation between local government and the provincial agencies, and, you know, everybody is trying to work towards the greater good.
Yeah, well, that's the case. They are welcoming. So, but anyway, I don't know how on earth we're supposed to approach this if we've no idea why it's being changed to a park zone. I would hate to support it and find out there was some debilitating reason that showed up. But anyway, I'll take it at face value and I'll go along with that. I was just curious with what the thing was there. So in conclusion then, that's my only problem with this is this mobile home park. It sets a terrible precedent. So Councillor, or Mayor Swain mentioned earlier another approach, and I would sure support that. So then it can be done as a proper rezoning package. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any additional speakers? I have a couple things to add, and then I will propose an amendment. Yeah, again, just back to the whole mobile home park. According to the staff report, everything is in order for the sanitary sewer on site and water. The one thing maybe staff can speak to it again is just in terms of the timelines. Was it the 2014? There was a covenant registered untitled, just saying that they were over through to Director Coates. I thought I wrote it down.
Yeah, the terminology is not a covenant, it is a notice on title. So, and it was as a result of a show cause hearing before council at an open meeting. It's a record, public record. And it was in 2014.
And at that point, how many houses or dwelling units were registered? Thought I heard there was like 4 or something, but.
Sorry you didn't bring it.
Well,
if
it
you
was
wanna-
less than the 9 that we have before us, and then it sounds like there may be even more units on it today. So obviously that notice on title didn't do anything to curb the behavior of adding additional dwelling units onto a property.
I think
So
the notice on title was in relation to building bylaw offenses.
building, sorry, can you say that again? I can't quite hear it.
Yeah, it's not in relation to zoning. It's a notice on title. It's not in relation to zoning. It's in relation to a building bylaw offense. And so the report came from the RDN, Chief Building Inspector at the time.
And sorry, and I thought there was something about the number of dwelling units at that time.
I know there was photos. If you want to recess, I can go and look it up. But again, they're separate issues.
Okay. Anyways, again, I just don't think this is going down the proper procedural pathway that I'd like to see. And with that, on that note, basically, I'll make the following amendment, and that's to strike 2A from the zoning bylaw number 180/2020, amendment bylaw 298, 2021. So it'd be striking that table 2A. And if I get a seconder, I can speak to it.
But then there would be no regulation on that site.
Well, then we can strike, then would it make sense just to strike the White Pines Estate Mobile?
Let's take that
Or the 7134 Blackjack Drive?
So just for clarity, you're suggesting just removing the reference to White Pines Mobile Home Park in the table,
Yes, that would do the,
right? And keeping the rest of the table.
yes. Because the other areas, they have the zoning already in place.
I'm in the map too.
And you would have to have in the motion and the and update the map as required, because it's also shown on the map.
Okay, and further that, update the map.
So just so I've got the motion to amend, it's a motion to amend, but to add as amended in item 2A. By striking White Pine Estates. And the table in 2A, how about that? Table in item 2A by striking the row with White Pine Estates. Is it anywhere else?
Yeah, just here.
Okay. So remove, by striking reference to White Pine Estates in item 2A and in Schedule 1.
That's correct, yeah. So is there a seconder to the amendment? Okay, second by Councillor Savage. And then discussion on the motion. We had lots of discussion, but I think this just does it doesn't really change anything for them because they're gonna continue to operate as they have been. And they're going ahead with the rezoning. So I think do it all in one swoop, and I think it'll be a much better process for the public and council alike. So that's the rationale. So Councillor Savage and then Councillor Gilsbart.
Yes, thank you. And as a note to Mr. Siebert, who's here tonight, the owner's getting exactly what he's asked for, which is being given approval for his existing setup there with 9 units being approved. So it's exactly what he wants. So we're not changing anything that he's seeking. It's just now when the rezoning comes through, it'll be done as a singular item, proper rezoning process with the sign, what amenities, parkland, that sort of thing, all done at once, which is the proper way to do it. And so I think this solves it so that it's not being rezoned in phases. It's just one thing. And I think you'll find there'll be support for it with the neighborhood who, from what I'm hearing, would like something authorized and overseen there and formalized, so there's no risk to their water, there's no risk to their peace and quiet, there's not the transient traffic of people living there for a while, leaving, coming, going, that sort of thing. So I'll fully support this. It's achieving exactly what is being proposed now in this zoning amendment. It's just going about it in a more proper process way. And I believe it'll have far more support in the neighborhood doing it this way as well. So I would just finish by saying I think you could look forward to the neighborhood supporting the ultimate rezoning if it's just going to be 16 units with, you know, some amenities, that sort of thing. So I'll certainly be supporting this. It solves things, I think. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
So go to this, yeah, go ahead.
I
Director
did
Coates.
just hear 2 different things. I heard from you that there was a motion to amend to take out all the reference to White Pine. And then I heard from Councillor Savage, apparently speaking to the candidate's rep, or the applicant's rep, stating that they were getting what they wanted. The 9 was being approved. And the 9, if this amendment passes, the 9 will not be approved. So I just wanted to be clear on that, and then also clear that council at this stage cannot take positions in relation to a future rezoning. There's a public process that needs to occur, and anyway, thanks.
Yes, a point of order, please.
Yeah, so point of order is being called. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to clarify. I'm used to usually speaking for myself, but what I meant was Mayor Swain had suggested the temporary use permit as part of his this motion. So if that's going up next, that's what I was referring to with them getting what they wanted. And the second was I wasn't approving the rezoning application in any way, shape, or form. I was just saying that he could look forward to support with the from the neighborhood with the criteria I cited. Thank you.
And just as for clarification, temporary use permit comment, and it was that's something they can apply for at any time. So, okay, so if they want to do something in the interim, they can go ahead and do that. They don't need a motion of council to do that. Councillor Gusbrook and then Councillor Wilson.
This report was brought before council for the meeting of November 17th, 2021. Here we are 10 months later. We have a motion on the fly tonight. In my opinion, we've wasted 20 minutes dealing with an amendment when the bylaw amendment is, and it's been repeated many times, is simply to set a baseline for these properties, and this White Pines in particular. Because unless we set the baseline by approving the amendment as it's set out, bylaw has no jurisdiction to go in there and do anything. So I really object to motion on the fly. There's no temporary use permit even mentioned, and we're not dealing with a subdivision. So I'd like to see the question called on this amendment, see where that goes, and then let's call the question on this bylaw.
So Councillor Wilson, and then I have a point of clarification. So go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Well, I'm super confused how somebody has their property assessed through BC assessments as a mobile home park in 1970. We're talking 52 years later. I look at this like we're just looking to normalize what is existing there or what we're told that exists there. If there's more than 9 units there, well, now we're giving bylaw the teeth, if you will, to say, hey, there's more than 9 units here. What's going on? And the applicant can apply to increase it to 16 total units on the property, and that could possibly be approved at a later date or denied. All we're doing is looking at normalizing what I'm understanding is there now. And, you know, I'd hate to see that, you know, I don't know how long it's been at 9 units, but it's 8 acres, and it's the least number of units of any mobile home park or where there's recreational vehicles in all of Lantzville. So again, I would encourage council to look at the fact that this property has been operating like this, not just in the last few years, but for the last 52 years. Maybe a little less, maybe a little more, but we're 9 units here that are existing, what I believe today, and if there's more than that, well, they'll have to apply to bring those into compliance. So looking at this, I don't understand, I'm confused why we're spending so much time on this particular motion or aspect of this motion.
Okay, so recognize that question has been called, but there has been a few statements thrown out. In terms of bylaw, it was mentioned that, you know, right now bylaw cannot do anything, and through to Director Limschue, I would be of the opinion that bylaw could do something because it's zoned RS1, and they have way more units that permitted than they should have.
You're
So
correct.
cannot bylaw act, so that,
the-
just to make sure there's no misinformation?
Yeah, you're
here?
correct. The zone and the actual use do not match. That's the issue here. And yes, bylaw could take some action with respect to it. It's one of those files where the use has been on the site for decades.
So that's good. You answered my question. Thank you. And then in terms of, I don't know the exact number of dwelling units that were on site in 2014, but, we're not talking, 1950. We're talking about 2014 has grown. So in my opinion, we're rewarding the property owner for continuing to add more dwelling units by granting them the rezoning without even having to go through the rezoning process. That doesn't sit well with me. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And that the other part is, why are we wasting so much time on it? I don't think we're wasting any time on it. We have a lot of residents that have had concerns about this. So I think it does deserve the attention that residents who wish to have this dealt with, it gets. We give it the due attention it deserves, because we have residents that have concerns that live in that immediate neighborhood, and there's I don't know if it's misinformation or just conflicting information circulating, but that doesn't sit well either. So I'll leave it at that. I'm prepared to call the question. I believe Councillor Savage, if you can keep it quick.
Yes, I've just got a couple of brief comments on this whole amendment matter. Then I feel like going for a walk up to the foothills. So the reason this is so important is it's a terrible process. It sets an unbelievable precedent that you're rewarded from transgressions against bylaws by just doing it, then you're rewarded, and no one else is getting that. That's why we're spending time on this, and the neighbors in Blackjack are quite happy we're spending this time looking after them. And to be clear, 30% of the land of these 8 acres is assessed as mobile home park. It's not the whole land. So I want to make clear what the facts are there. And bylaw, yes, can enforce now transgressions. So, and this is not a baseline, it's a rezoning. That's the problem. So Mayor Swain's come up with a great solution, solves it for everyone. I suggest we just take it and then move on to our next item. Thank you.
So I'm just going to move to calling the question on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment and those opposed? Councillor Gusselbach, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Proctor opposed. The amendment fails. Now we're back to the main motion. Actually, not amended, so just as is. Councillor Gusselbach.
Yes, I move that we call the question on the main motion.
Okay, so the question's being called. So at this point, I'm going to call for a vote whether or not we call the question. So again, all we're voting on is whether or not to call the question. So all those in favor of calling the question? Okay, so that's carried unanimously then. All right, so I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor and opposed? No, Mayor Swain's opposed and Councillor Savage is opposed. It carries. Third reading carries. All right, so that takes us on to the next one. So this is bylaw number 302. Is anybody prepared to make that motion? Let's go ahead, Councillor Gusselbach.
Yes, that District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180/2020, amendment bylaw 6935 Dickinson Road number 302, 2022 be adopted.
Okay, and we have a seconder for that. Second by Councillor Proctor. There's no discussion on this. I'll simply call the question. All those in favor and opposed? Noting that Councillor Savage is opposed, that carries. Takes us on to 9D. So now we're on to the phase development for the foothills. So we're bylaw number 302. Someone prepared to make that motion? So go ahead, Councillor Savage.
That District of Lantzville Phase Development Agreement Foothills Development Bylaw number 309/2022 be given first reading.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Second by Councillor Wilson. Discussion on the motion. Go ahead, Councillor Savage. Oh, sorry, we're at first reading.
Yeah.
I'm asleep at the wheel. Anyways, I'll just move to calling the question. This is just to introduce the bylaws. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. All right, so that takes us on to the next one. Someone prepared to make that motion. Go ahead, Councillor Savage.
That District of Lantzville Phased Development Agreement, Foothills Development, Bylaw number 309, 2022, be given second reading.
Okay, that's second by Councillor Gusselbrecht. Discussion on second reading. Go ahead, Councillor Savage, and then Councillor Gusselbrecht.
Yes, thank you. This must be a record for Lantzville that such a big development received not one submission of opposition. It really speaks to what a great development it is, number one, and number two, it speaks to the cooperative nature between the community and the Foothills group. And the phasing looks good to me. There's just one note that when we get to phase 5, which is the Northwest Ridge, there will be two things which I'm confident we can work out with the Foothills group. And one is just that the contiguous trail along the Northwest Ridge will need some flexibility negotiating the terrain. It's just not possible to run a trail straight along the property's northern boundary line, being limited to just 3 meters because it includes a section of cliff which defines the boundary as well. So some massaging and conversations will be needed, as well as ensuring the homes don't dominate the top of the ridge from the perspective of the foothills being a green backdrop to Lantzville. And number two is just to create a wildlife corridor along the western boundary in this area so the wildlife won't be forced to travel through the yards of homes. So both these things, I'm quite sure the perspective of the group will also see the merits of being flexible. So I think this PDA lays out the phasing. We'll find each phase will be a process of the community helping the Foothills group and vice versa. So the lesson is working with communities always creates the strongest foundation moving forward. Of note, the Hecla Creek Village is in the 4th phase. This will allow lots of time to plan and create a true masterpiece village at this location, adjacent to the gorgeous Hecla Creek Gorge, replete with 40-foot rock formations. Residents can be a source of suggested ideas if desired, and it is the feature in this PDA, Phase Development Agreement, I am most looking forward to. So I'll certainly be supporting this, and I'm hoping that we get some good ideas and responses at the public hearing, and don't be disappointed, the Foothills group, if it's a small turnout. It's not a measure of support, but people are just getting worn out with so many public hearings. But I can assure you everything I'm hearing along the way has been very positive with the cooperation and the results, and so much to look forward to. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gusbert, go ahead.
I'm just hoping Councillor Savage and I are still alive to have a beer there at the Hecla Creek pub and look out over this great community that we live in.
Okay, additional speakers. For myself, yeah, I think the phase development agreement looks really good. You know, in terms of the phasing, especially, you know, as we heard, I believe during the public hearing process, shovels won't be in the ground until I think it was 2024, if I heard correctly. And so it's going to take some time to move into the next phase and go. But it's you know, I was quite impressed with everything as we went through the whole process, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So it's just from what I understand, still lots of work for the group to do to get everything ready to go and get the shovels in the ground. But I think this is gonna be you know, a fantastic development, and it is more unique, and I think that's probably why we don't see the public coming out opposing this, is because it is off on its own. It is the Foothills community. It's even though it's within Lantzville and we'll strive to make it, always be a part of Lantzville and so forth, it is off on its own. It's not front and center in the middle of the community where it has that potential to affect. And I'm looking forward to the direction it goes in, and really looking forward to how it will be that recreational little mecca in the foothills and in the different shops and future pub and I will be keeping on taking a multivitamin to make sure I'm alive to have a beer up in that pub one day, and I don't think it'll be that far off. But yeah, no, it's exciting times ahead of us in that area. So, any additional comments, debate from council? Dealing with a second reading here. Okay, hearing or seeing none, I'll move to calling the question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. That takes us on to the next motion. Go ahead, Councillor Gusbrock.
Yes, that the District of Lantzville Phase Development Agreement Foothills Development Bylaw number 309, 2022 be scheduled for electronic public hearing on September the 28th, 2022 at 6 p.m.
Okay, and that's seconded by Councillor Savage. Any discussion on the scheduling of the public hearing? Okay, hearing or seeing none, I will move to calling the question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. Okay.
And I would like to, sorry, as a point of order, I would like to declare conflict, please, on the next items, which are E, F, G, H. Thank
And
you.
can you state the general reason?
And the
here?
general reason is my proximity of my property to this applications. Thank you.
And I'm gonna actually call for like a 3-minute recess. We're room's clearing out. I need to, yeah, all right. So we'll reconvene at 8:45. All right, Councillor Proctor, I don't know if you're in the room or in your space.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, it's just the video's not on, so I don't know if you're there or not. All right, so I'm going to call this meeting back to order. We're on to bylaw number 315. Is someone prepared to make that motion? Go ahead, Councillor Gusselbrock.
Yes, the District of Lantzville Official Community Plan Bylaw 150, 2019. Amendment, bracket 6701 Harwood Drive, Bylaw number 315, 2022 be adopted.
Okay, and do we have a seconder to that? Okay, Councillor Wilson. And just through to staff, and this is not at all an attempt to debate, but this is just, you know, in terms of just transparency, communication with the rest of the council. Covenant 219 has been registered untitled with outlining the amenities.
Your worship, through council, the amenity contribution was dollars. So 3,000 for the lots being created, and an extra 20,000 towards waterworks in the area. There is no covenant being registered, as the applicants have decided to write a check for the amount.
Oh, okay, so that's news
So we're
to me.
getting, we're getting cash, yes.
Okay, so that's new information for me. Okay, fair enough, thank you.
Cash is king.
Yeah, that eliminates that whole need. So a lot, just for council's benefit, like the last I spoke to staff on it was, I believe that was going to be the process, but they've written a check, so that's makes it a lot simpler. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to move to call in question. All those in favor and opposed, it's carried unanimously. Okay, so that takes us on to the next one. Someone prepared to make that motion, go ahead, Councillor Gusbrack.
The District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180, 2020, amendment, bracket 6701 Harwood Drive, bylaw number 316, 2022 be adopted.
Okay, and is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Wilson. I'll call the question. All those in favor and opposed? That's carried unanimously. That takes us on to bylaw number 317. Someone prepared to make that motion. Councillor Gusbrack.
The District of Lantzville Official Community Plan Bylaw 150, 2019 amendment, bracket 6717 Harwood Drive, bylaw number 317, 2022 be adopted.
Okay, and seconded by Councillor Proctor. And again, with this one, through to staff, is there a 219 covenant or just a check?
No covenant, just a check.
Okay, good enough. And that's just, again, securing the amenities with respect to the approval. So, all right, so I'll move to, so it's been moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. That takes us on to the next one. Go ahead, Councillor Bark.
That District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180, 2020, amendment 6717 Harwood Drive, bylaw number 318, 2022 be adopted.
Okay, and seconded by Councillor Wilson. Call the question. All those in favor and opposed, again, and carried unanimously. All right, that takes us on to, well, we need Councillor Savage back in the room, please. All right, so noting it's 8:50 and Councillor Savage is rejoining the meeting. It's we're now on to item, oh, where are we there? I of the agenda, so bylaw number 3. Oh.
We should be on K.
Yeah. True. Well, that's, didn't circle that in my agenda. Okay, so we're on item K. So this is the 2022 council meeting schedule. Someone prepared to make that motion. Go ahead, Councillor Savage, or Councillor Gusselbreck.
That the 2022 council meeting schedule be amended to add a special council meeting to be held Wednesday, September 28th, 2022, at 6 p.m. electronically and viewed in the council chambers, Municipal Hall, second floor, 7192 Lantzville Road, Lantzville, BC, for the purpose of holding an electronic public hearing for bylaws ready to proceed and for consideration of related development bylaws.
And do we have seconder? Second by Councillor Savage. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Gusselbreck, if you wish. Okay, and through to Councillor Savage. Nope. All right, and through the rest of council. Hearing or seeing none, we'll move to call in question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. All right, so now we're back to item I, which is bylaw number 223. I'll just simply make the motion that the District of Lantzville Community Water System Expansion Reserve Fund bylaw number 323, 2022 be given first, second, and third readings. Is there a second? A second by Councillor Gusselbreck. Discussion on this item. We have Director Hare, who's been waiting patiently all evening to perhaps speak to this. Director Hare, is there anything you would like to say to introduce this bylaw?
This bylaw has been, yes, Your Worship, thank you. This bylaw has been prepared as per the council resolution that was passed during the financial plan amendment, which instructed staff to prepare a bylaw for the expansion of the water system with a $5,000 contribution being made to the reserve from the water system revenues.
Excellent. So through to council, any debate, questions? Go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, this was a good move by council to create this. It shows we're taking steps towards getting water to all the areas that need it, and every little step helps. There'll be approximately 9,000 per unit cash amenity in the foothills coming into the coffers, water DCCs from new development, some of which can, or at least some of the cost of water expansion can be funded by DCCs. And the expansion of the Clark Med system and other strategies we can employ in the future. So all of this is moving forward in a steady way. And I always like forward progress, albeit it can be done more quickly, it can be done more slowly, but you can never argue against progress, which we are doing. So, so I wholly support it. It's a great start to start putting things in the fund, which will help out with all these other strategies to get water to these areas. Thank you.
Okay, additional comments, debate from council. Okay, hearing or seeing none, I will move to call in question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. All right, so that takes us into bylaw number 324. I'll just make that motion again, that the District of Lantzville Facilities Life Cycle Reserve Fund bylaw number 324, 2022 be given first, second, and third readings. Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Gusselbreck. Discussion on the motion. And again, through to Director Hare, I don't know if there's anything to say further to this.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, no, I think my report is self-explanatory, that we have 4 standalone reserves with individual balances and individual contributions to each reserve. And by combining those into one municipal facilities life cycle reserve, council will have greater flexibility and be able to achieve funding for overall facilities, life cycle facilities regeneration costs.
Great, thank you for that.
More effectively.
Yeah, and you know, it basically the 3 combined takes us just over $800,000, I believe. So that's yeah, that's all good. Through to Councillor Gusbark, is there anything else to add?
No, it rationalizes it. Perhaps the next council will be able to make a decision about the Heritage Church or Costin Hall. I know the last two councils, including this one, have, thought about that. And instead of removing one or building a new one, we've sort of patched things up. But this gives you some more leeway that if a project is decided upon by council to, let's say, to rebuild the fire hall, which, we've got plans going, there's a bigger pot of money to use to get that on the go. So yes, I'm in favor of this bylaw.
Any additional speakers, comments on this one? Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Yes, one drawback with this is that all of it could be spent on one building, so the other buildings will get their reserve reduced or depleted. So the question is, where could this flexibility lead us? Now, flexibility in business is paramount. However, the key question here is comparing the upsides to the downsides, so I'll just leave it up to the rest of council to give their advice, and I'll take note and likely support it. Thank you.
Okay, and any additional comments, questions? Councillor Wilson, go ahead.
Just a question through Mayor, through to Director Hare. How can we be certain that the funds are put towards like maintenance projects, maybe minor improvement projects, but not, massive or very large capital projects with those particular buildings? I think that we need to be careful that, that fund doesn't get so large that all of a sudden we're looking at, in a few years or 5 years down the road, it's now $2 million and we're gonna build another building with it. It's for in the spirit for the maintenance of these buildings. Am I correct?
That is the spirit. And, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Wilson. The spirit is for life cycle maintenance and replacement. And this is a statutory reserve, so funds can only be used for the purpose stipulated in the bylaw. And the use of funds also has to be approved by council. So that would be your surety or your check.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions, comments from council? Okay, here and seeing none, I'll move to call in question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. All right, so that takes us on to the next item. So that's L. So this is the 2022-2026 financial plan amendment for the Public Works dump truck replacement in 2022. I'll make the motion that the 2022 to 2026 financial plan be amended to include an additional $50,000 in 2022 funded from the Public Works Vehicle Reserve for the replacement of the Public Works dump truck. Do we have a seconder to this? Second by Councillor Wilson. Discussion on the motion. Through to staff, Director Hare, I don't know if you want to speak to this. Staff has given me the Coles notes, but for council's benefit.
Your Worship, through the rest of council, yes. Essentially, a tender was received on the dump truck, and it was found that basically the budget was the budgeted amount was inadequate to fund the purchase of the replacement of the existing dump truck. So additional $50,000 is required for that replacement. The old dump truck is, I believe, it's addressed in the report, but there are safety concerns. It is an aging vehicle, and it's reached end of useful life.
Okay, thank you for that. Through to council, questions, comments, debate. Okay, Councillor Wilson is seconder. No,
nothing to add.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, unfortunately for me, it's a no for $50,000 for a new dump truck. Not until the following happens. Not until we get our Foothills construction traffic route put in a bylaw, Alds Road's residents are not pleased with the road turned into a construction traffic speedway. This motion was approved last September, and nothing's been done 1 year later. And number two, little has been done regards beach road end encroachments and traffic hazard encroachments on Dickinson Road. This motion directing staff to do so was also approved almost a year ago. All the work was done on the Peterson Foreshore Road end, yet the big encroachment at this location was ignored. An Escalonia hedge has been planted in order to incorporate a big chunk of district property into
Councillor
private
Savage,
property.
are you on the right motion?
Yes, I'm giving conditions for my approval.
Of the dump truck?
Yes. if
Okay,
these
just making
two-
sure. Okay, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so my viewpoint is when these two named items are done, the motion that's now a year old, nothing's been done, then this cost increase for a new dump truck can be considered. And basically my reasoning is common in the business world to have conditions as part of giving funds, and the same principle should apply here. This $50,000 is residents' money, and they should get maximum benefit for it. And this construction traffic route is a huge benefit, and my hope it would have been done a year ago. So same with the encroachments. Thank you.
Okay, so go ahead, Director Coates.
Trying to understand how to phrase this. I would suggest it's inappropriate to suggest penalties to staff in relation to work that a council feels is not done.
Yeah, as a point of order,
It's-
Okay,
please.
point of order has been called. Go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. Again, I'm perfectly capable of speaking for myself. This is not punishment. This is simply conditions to get things done. It's nothing
Okay, so
punishing
Councillor
about it.
Savage, it's more of a back and forth, actually. Point of order is stating, what part of our procedure bylaw is being violated. So again, I was going to speak to what Director Coates is, I think, alluding to anyways, but, and I think that would probably address it. So Councillor Wilson, you were going to speak, and then I'll speak next.
My opinion is this is chicanery. I mean, this is for residents, we're now punishing residents that we're not going to be getting a tool, a truck that we need. We're not punishing staff by telling them that you can't spend the $50,000 on a dump truck until you do these things that you didn't do before. Well, send staff an email saying, hey, we haven't addressed these things. That's totally separate from this. We have public works staff that need to do things, and we've been told that our current vehicle is possibly unsafe. It's completely irrelevant. Anyways, I won't be supporting any amendment around that.
Okay, so I was going to speak to this as well. In terms of, the logic, I'm not totally following it, in terms of the additional funding request that's specifically so staff will be more likely to be successful in acquiring a dump truck. That makes perfect sense. I think in terms of if there's outstanding motions that any member of council feels that needs to be addressed, then that should be addressed separately. So, to bring that into this motion, again, I fail to see the logic. Staff has obviously to balance out a lot of things in their work, whatever they call it, schedule table. I don't know what you guys call it, but ultimately it's just there are competing priorities and so forth. But again, if there's something that any member of council feels that it needs, a motion that has not been addressed, then should be followed up on. But again, I will be supporting this. It's not straightforward. Councillor Gusselbrecht, and then I have some other comments. And in terms of, I'll just kind of continue. I just didn't want to dominate the time here. Yeah, in terms of like the funding request, it totally makes sense. I've spoken to someone in industry, and it's there are supply chain issues all over the place, and so it's kind of in a funny way like good for any of the people selling equipment because they have nothing on their lots, but they got nothing to come in and replace it with. So in fact, their overall sales are down, even though their lots are cleared off and they've sold everything. So it's created a lot of extra demand, and the costs to get stuff is just going up and up, and I think it's just a reality of the time we're in. Hopefully, these things will soften because, from what I understand, some of these supply chain issues may be getting slowly rectified as shipping costs and so forth from the countries that essentially manufactures this stuff, and it gets basically turned around. So there should be, shipping container costs are coming down significantly, and that's going to impact the overall costs of import goods and so forth. So anyways, maybe we'll see some cost reprieve in the future. Any additional comments, debate on this item? Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Yes, in negotiations, two business people negotiating can give each other things they both want. It's the most usual, common thing I've ever seen. So I'm doing nothing more than that. Thank you.
And not to go into too much of a back and forth is, when there's no supply, it's pretty hard to negotiate. It's kind of like Teslas right now. Essentially, you pay sticker price, and even used Teslas are going more than what people paid for them 4 years ago. So it's just a supply and demand issue. We're in a pickle, and to replace this, and it's going to cost more money, and that's just the unfortunate circumstances of the world we live in today. So hopefully, in a year's time, when shipping costs start coming down, and we get our supply chain really back in order, we'll be in maybe a better purchasing situation. So, all right, unless there's anything further, I will move to calling the question. Okay, all those in favor and opposed, that's noting that Councillor Savage is opposed, it carries. All right, so that moves us on to item M, and this is the CEPF Volunteer and Composite Fire Department Equipment and Training Grant Program. I'll just make the motion that an application be submitted for grant funding through the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund for Volunteer and Composite Fire Department Equipment and Training Stream for 100% funding of up to $30,000 for a thermal imaging camera by the October 21st, 2022 deadline. So second by Councillor Kesselbrack. It's pretty straightforward. I don't think we have anybody I don't know if anybody on staff wants to comment on this. It's pretty straightforward. 100% grant funding. We like that. Any comments, debate from council? Okay, hearing, seeing none, I will move to calling the question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. All right, so that takes us on to unfinished business. So this is, I'll just read it. So this is the Pearson Road Beach Road End, and basically I have reconsidered the motion under section 131 of the community charter. This was done, I'm trying to recall now, but anyways, so no more reverse seconder, sorry? June 28th, thank you. This is taking a while to get to. So basically, I'll just read the motion for the viewership's benefit. So that the District of Lantzville support and principal planning for restoration work for a nature area in the right of way of the Pearson Road Beach Road End post-development works completion by the fall, and subject to reports to council for approval of work plan, including some use of volunteers, design, funding, and communication consultation plan. So that's the motion. Discussion on it. So with respect to this, I do support it, in terms of trying to bring some community members into the fold with respect to restoring that area back to its natural state. I was meaning to ask Director Spears the question on this, but I've been down to the site. I'm just wondering, or maybe another member of staff would know, in terms of the area, usually those sites would be surveyed prior to the works being completed. So I just couldn't see any of the survey markers, because I I probably have the direction wrong, but going towards Sebastian Road on that side of the road right away there, it looks like there might be some encroachment there. I'm not too sure. It's really hard to tell. And in terms of restoring that area back to its native state, I don't know if there's anything staff can kind of offer in terms of like where we're at on that and whether or not the site was surveyed prior to the works being completed.
Yes, it was surveyed.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just couldn't
Yeah.
see any of the, usually the markers or lot markers are pretty obvious to see. Is there any encroachment on that side of the road right away?
There's a raised garden in the right-of-way, but other than that, no.
Okay, so there is encroachment in there. Yeah,
Um,
as far as staff's aware.
Yeah, the raised garden was the only one I'm aware of.
And then in terms of the, and maybe staff knows the answer to this question, in terms of restoring that kind of back to its original state or what would be reflective of, its natural state, where are we at on that in that process?
Some of the work can't happen until the fall. And so my understanding is that the developer has a work plan. Fred is supervising it.
That's correct. So the developer, as part of the project, had to provide detailed drawings with respect to the installation of the pipe and ultimately the restoration. There's a works and services agreement that's been entered into between ourselves and the developer, and they're obligated to work towards the plan that's been approved by the district. As Director Coates indicated, the installation of the landscaping may not take place till fall just because we're still coming out of summer.
Okay, fair enough. Usually having information helps to clarify things. So is it possible for council, or if not, for staff, or so for council to get a copy of the restoration plan for the landscaping, or is it possible for the district to even post on the district's website what the actual restoration plan looks like? Because if that's the case and public's comfortable with it, they may just say, go ahead and do it. We don't need to be involved.
My understanding was that the plan was for the developer to do the work they have planned, that is their commitment to do. It's not at this point, a public engagement of what that work would be. And then once the work is completed and the restoration work is done and the plantings are done, then I think the public and council will have a better idea of what they have. And then if you wish to bring something forward, then would be appropriate.
Okay, well, I can just make the request outside of the meeting, but I'm just wondering if there is a restoration plan of the plantings and stuff like that, and it's been approved, then someone has a copy of that plan. And like I said, if the public may be very satisfied with what that looks like. I know, talking to residents, what's there now, I guess people are probably not satisfied with that, but I know that in time there's a plan. So I'm just wondering, how can we communicate that out? Like, this is what that area is going to look like. We could put it like a quarter page in our newsletter for those who are concerned about Pearson Road at road end. This is what the end result's going to look like. This is what's being approved or proposed and approved. So do we have anything that indicates? Okay, fair enough. All right, so maybe this motion could be a little bit premature. Councillor Gusbrecht, go ahead.
Yeah, we've had a lot of talk around the table here about road ends, doing something with them. I know we made a motion that staff do surveys for encroachments, and I see some movement ahead on that, specifically Orr Road. I think this would be part of the basket, should be put in the basket for strategic planning for the next council, and decide where on the strategic plan list it should go, and come up with the plan and what you want to do. So with that thought in mind, my motion is to refer this motion to the strategic planning session of the new council.
Okay, do we have a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Proctor. Discussion on the referral motion. Is there anything further to add, Councillor Gaspar?
No, I you know, these are important things, and you're right, the public would like to know, but let's do it in a more organic and wholesale fashion, and next council can decide how far up on the strategic priority list they want to put it. That's all.
Okay. Councillor Proctor, I see your hands. And you're muted.
I'm also tired. I agree with what Council Gesselbrock just said. I think that this is important. I think it's also important to wait and see when it's finished. People can take a look. I think that this will give the new council a good chance to delve into strategic priorities and how important they are, and all the huge bucket of things that you have to choose from to put in the right order to use the limited amount of funds that we have here in Lantzville to do the best that we can. So I support this motion.
Okay, any additional comments, questions? Councillor Savage?
Yes, it's really up to the next council. When they decide to approach this, they don't have to be told now at what time of the year to address it. Next item is there is an encroachment there. It's, as I say, it's an Escallonia. Shrubs have been planted in a row well into the probably 15 feet into the district property for no other reason. Obviously, Escallonia grows up to about 8 feet tall, and it's to enclose that section of the public property into the private yard, quite obviously. And the whole idea with it's a good reconsideration motion because there was 2 councillors for, 2 against the last time, and Mayor Swain was not here. So the whole idea of this is to put this money that the developer has to pay towards a good product. And right now, an 8-foot wide, basically, gravel road going straight down and not curving or any design at all. It's just a straight gravel road with dirt that's been leveled and graded so it's ready for lawn. That to me will be the extent of the restoration. It's just going to be, and then leaving the encroachment hasn't been touched. So it's simply going to be a gravel road with lawn as far as I can see. And the whole idea is we want something beautiful and elegant, charming there that restores it back to nature. There has to be, it's not just restoring to nature, it's restoring residents' faith that something nice is going to be there. The reaction to it now, it's just a dreadful change from what it was to how it is now. So we want to fuel this funds if there's more to be spent. All that's been spent so far is laying out gravel. It's over 6 inches deep, so it's not going to be easy to remove. But what we want is a proper charm that it used to have with a winding path and nature. That means some select trees and native shrubs done in a nice design, and maybe some other features like incorporating this tree that's being stored, some of the timber from that. Could be a table, could be anything. So that's the idea, is not just sitting back and waiting for a poor result, which I'm convinced I've already seen. The work has stopped as far as it's going, and it's been graded for lawn as far as I can see. So the idea is to get volunteers involved to make up for the, the negativity of removing the tree and so on without consulting anyone. So that's the idea. So I don't see a need to wait to see the end result. It'll just be more money spent in the wrong way, potentially. I'd rather have the funds just given and allow the community to put in something nice there. So that's all. We're just trying to achieve a good end here. And at this point, it's not a good end. It's quite a terrible result as far as I can see. So that's the idea, and we're just setting this in motion. By passing this, we're not precluding the rest of the work being done. It's just starting that process where we can start some consultation, maybe give some ideas as to what could be there, and it doesn't, as I say, preclude the developer doing his thing, then measuring it from there. But I don't think there's a landscaping plan per se. It's simply a plan to restore it as the developer chooses, perhaps in concert with Public Works. So that's all. I'm just trying to start the process of a better result. And, you know, part of our job here is to serve residents, and residents will feel like they're served if something nice where they have input goes back in there. They won't feel like they've been served if it's just left in this state. It's just it's terrible. So thank you.
All right, so we're gonna need a motion to extend here shortly, but and we have Councillor Wilson. So actually go ahead, Councillor Wilson, and then I've got a comment, and then
Just through mayor to staff, I heard that, you know, maybe the developer can put something on the website so they can see what they're putting it there. Do we have any sort of confirmation or sort of an idea? I mean, Councillor Savage is saying that it's just going to be gravel 6 inches thick. From what I hear from staff, they're going to be putting it back to, you know, what it should be or what it was before. Not, I'm not hearing 6 inches of gravel.
Yeah. So for clarity, and I think this discussion happened the last time, council can't get involved at this point in what is a contractual commitment between the District of Lantzville and the contractor. So what we had asked and ask again is that community and council be patient and wait and see what results at the end of the contractor's work. We totally, reported it would be the fall before you will see anything. And so, but it is a contract. We can't take money that the contractor has provided to guarantee they will do this work and give it to others. Like, that would be illegal. So it's a contractual commitment.
All right, thank you.
For myself, it's just a follow-up comment. You know, ultimately, staff is listening to the conversation this evening, and I'm sure they'll try and do everything possible to make sure that, because it's the simplest way of doing it, is have the contractor do the work as they said they were going to do. And it's that simple. And if they're not, it's easier to hold their feet to the fire and make them do it and hold up their development until they do such, you know, what they're supposed to do. So.
And the discussion has been that it would be as good or better.
Yeah, and that's, you know, what it'll be, right? So, all right, so Councillor Gusbrock, you got your hand up.
Yes, there's going to be dirt there. I've been down there. It's wide open. We're working on the encroachment, and I agree with Councillor Savage. You know, we've got too many people in the past that have put up trees and hedges and encroached on the property. But here's the thought. Let's see what condition they leave it in. Let's talk about a food forest. Now, food forests are great ideas. You go to the south end of town around 5th Street, Princess Avenue, Columbia, the whole neighborhood there has planted out the boulevards with an amazing amount of fruit trees, figs, plums, golden raspberries, and they have actually planted out the whole Bayview School on 2 sides. So as the kids are coming back to school, there's apples and plums for them to pick and eat. So here's a great idea for the next council. We're talking about volunteers again, is And I will donate up to 5 trees. I've got figs and apples, but let's make it a volunteer project, council approval, of course, and get people down there planting and looking after it. And that way they take pride in something in their community and as well provide food, nutrition. I think, urban farming was one of our priorities. I think the next council ought to look carefully at instituting a farmer's market again and planting more food for us. So I'm just going to throw that out there, that strategic priorities, let's talk about volunteers, whoever's on council.
And the motion on the floor is to refer the main motion to the strategic planning session,
Yes.
the new council?
Yeah, so I'm gonna call the question on that. It has to be very quick, Councillor Savage.
Yes, just 2 quick things, please. That's exactly what we're trying to do, Councillor Gesselbrack. I love it, but that's not going to happen without further input. And to Councillor Wilson, that gravel road is already there. There's no guesswork on the design. The design's been done. It's a straight gravel road going right to the foreshore. So that's the problem. Thank you.
All right, so unless there's anything really strongly wanting to be, or something strongly to be expressed, I'm gonna call the question. So I don't see anybody jumping up and down, so I'm gonna call the question. All those in favor of the referral motion and opposed? That looks like it. Councillor Savage is opposed, it carries. So we need a motion to extend beyond 9:30, so Councillor Brack?
I've had a peek at the in-camera, and I see at least one issue, in fact, only one issue that really needs our attention. I'm prepared to go past the 9:30, but only on the condition that we go in camera and deal with item number 4. That would be my motion.
Okay, so motion to extend under those pretenses, okay.
So for clarity, that motion to extend is to deal with item 16 only. But you don't have time for public clarification?
Yeah, so it is just,
or
yeah,
you're
deal
going to
with
do that
16.
first? Item 15?
Well, so through the council, we can suspend the rest of the agenda. So mayor and council verbal updates, and then the motion that follows, and the council meeting schedule, and so it's really just to deal with items 15 and 16. And then when we go on camera, we can decide what part of the agenda we referred, or we're just dealing with item 4. Okay, so Councillor.
Yes, I totally agree with Councillor Gesselbrack. I'm all in favor of that, but I want to restrict it to just item 4 and leave it at that. Thank you.
That's fine. Okay, so I think all the council understands. So I'm going to move to call in a question on extending meeting under those pretenses. All those in favor and opposed? That's carried unanimously. All right, so we're just going to move right on to item 15 of the agenda, which is public clarification. So again, persons recognized by the chair to speak must first state their name and address for the record, and the agenda item regarding which they are seeking clarification, excluding public hearing topics, and may speak once for up to 2 minutes to ask clarification questions. For example, how did the vote go, any technicalities, requests, interpretation of abbreviations, jargon, etc. So any members of the gallery wishing to ask clarification questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 16 of our agenda. I need a motion to close the meeting pursuant to sections. Well, I'll just make the motion that the regular council meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91 EC, or sorry, can I make sure? Geez, my eyes are bad. 91 EC, F, I, J, and 92 B and D of the community charter. So a seconder, seconded by Councillor Savage. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried unanimously. All right, so we're in camera, we just need the doors closed. Kill the feed.